Number 10. Secret Identity Superman. In Secret Identity, Superman, as we know him, is a fictional character. We are introduced to a young boy named Clark Kent, who is named after the character by his parents. One night, he discovers that for reasons unknown, he actually has the powers of Superman, and he decides to become a real-life Superman. The book follows his career from child to old man as he tries to navigate the pressures of being a superhero and leading a normal life. He has all of Superman's powers, but as he isn't Kryptonian, he has several advantages. 1. Kryptonite doesn't exist, so he has no weakness that can instantly bring him to his knees. And 2, he's the only superpowered being on the planet, which means there is no one who can even hope to stand up to him. Luckily, like the fictional Clark Kent, he's a pretty chill dude, and he doesn't use his powers to take over the world or anything like that. Number 9. Calvin Ellis. When the Kal-El of Earth-23 was sent to Earth from Krypton by his parents, he was discovered by the Ellis family, who raised him as their own. Calvin Ellis grew up to be Superman, champion of justice and the oppressed, and he has all the powers of the classic Superman. However, what sets him apart is that he actually grew up to be President of the United States, making him the most powerful man on Earth both when he is Superman and when he is in his secret identity. Number 8. Bruce Wayne Superman. In this universe, Kal-El's rocket was not found by the Kent family, but by Thomas and Martha Wayne. They had no children of their own, so they adopted the child and named him Bruce Wayne. Bruce grew up being raised by the couple at Wayne Manor with the help of Alfred the butler. One night, when they were walking home from a movie, they were mugged by Joe Chill, who shot and killed Thomas and Martha. He tried to shoot Bruce, but he discovered that he was bulletproof, and Bruce promptly incinerated Joe Chill with his heat vision. He grew up having repressed the memory of his powers until one night the manor was infiltrated by robbers, causing him to rediscover his powers. Alfred took him down to the cave under the manor and showed him the rocket he came to Earth in, and Bruce became the vigilante Batman. He has all of the powers of Superman and all of the ruthlessness of Batman, making him someone who criminals should fear more than anything. He operated as Batman until a Jokerized Lex Luthor attacked Gotham with a militia, which Batman single-handedly stopped with no casualties. After this, he abandoned the Batman persona and at the urging of Lois Lane, became a less scary superhero, Superman. Number 7. Injustice Superman. In the world featured in the Injustice games and comics, Superman was brainwashed by the Joker into destroying Metropolis as well as Lois Lane and his unborn child. This caused Superman to snap, and he brutally killed the Joker. He decided to punish all the criminals and reshape the world in his image, becoming more unhinged and violent the more power he seized. He has all the standard powers of Superman, but unlike his main Earth counterpart, he doesn't hold back and won't hesitate to kill anyone who stands in the way of his new world order. Luckily, the Batman of this universe was able to synthesize kryptonite and make pills that help his insurgency become strong enough to take on the villains and former heroes that Superman has recruited into his cause. But Superman is still so unstoppable that the only person capable of defeating him was a Superman pulled from an alternate dimension. Number 6. Superboy Prime. This version of Kal-El was sent to Earth in a universe where Superman was already a fictional character. He didn't have any powers until a cosmic vortex opened up, transporting the Earth-1 Superman to his universe. This caused Superboy's powers to manifest, and he left to help Superman in the Crisis on Infinite Earths. When all of the Earths were destroyed, he escaped to the antimatter universe. He became so mad at having lost his home that he shattered reality with a punch. He became a twisted and cruel version of the Man of Steel, as he did anything it took to try and get home. As his version of Krypton was swallowed by its sun, there is no kryptonite in his universe, and he has been shown to be immune to any that he comes across. He is also immune to magic, unlike the usual Superman. His only weakness is that he is much more dependent on solar energy to maintain his power level, and has to wear solar armor that keeps him fully charged.
But coming in after that, number 5, Wally West. It almost feels rude to put Wally West here over Barry Allen, but in a lot of ways, Wally is arguably stronger than Barry is. Wally is the fastest of all the Flashes, only maybe rivaled by Barry himself, but Wally is arguably the fastest person that has ever existed. Just look at some of his feats. He was fast enough to easily break the barriers of speed and be the first person to enter the Speed Force. He was able to save and carry over 500,000 million people 35 miles away from a nuclear explosion that had already detonated, including the people who were at ground zero, and he did it in only 0.0001 microseconds, which if you don't know is 1/100 billionth of a second. Do you know what that means? That means Wally West had to be moving at 13 trillion times the speed of light. He can move so fast that time itself appears to stand still. He was able to outrun death itself, for crying out loud. My favorite version of Wally West though is from the Kingdom Come Elseworld story, where he becomes this being who is barely even tangible. He moves around Coast City, I believe, being at almost all places at the same time. He basically became the Speed Force. Wally West is absolutely broken. Number 4, Wonder Woman. Gifted with the powers of the gods, Wonder Woman has many of the same abilities that Superman has, including strength, speed, and durability. However, Wonder Woman's Amazonian training sets her a little bit apart as an amazing warrior. It's been debated for years whether Diana could beat Superman in a fight, and while she's shown to be capable of hurting him at the least, she doesn't have the same raw power. Instead, Wonder Woman dominates her opponents through a combination of her special abilities, superior tactics, and special equipment gifted to her by the gods. But she has been elevated beyond even that. When Diana was empowered with the World Forge and the anti-crisis energy at the end of Doom War / during Death Metal, she had enough power to shake stars and phase throughout time through sheer strength. She had displayed the ability to shrink an entire planet and was able to link everyone together and restore their memories as one history, as in of all DC's continuity. She had cosmic awareness, was able to see multiple events during the war against the Batman Who Laughs at once, as well as precognition and retrocognition. She was crazy powerful for that little bit of time. And at number 3 is Dr. Fate. Dr. Fate is like DC's Sorcerer Supreme. There have been a handful of people over the years who have taken on the name, slapped on the powerful Amulet of Anubis, Cloak of Destiny, and Helmet of Fate, and been an agent of the Lords of Order, who govern raw magic in the universe. Kent Nelson was the original one, given his powers by Nabu, one of the Lords of Order. Now, without the powerful artifacts, Kent was given superhuman powers to make him more suitable for the Helmet of Fate, so he has telekinesis, flight, invulnerability, and superhuman strength. But when he has the actual helmet, his telekinesis has been strong enough to move an entire planet into the sun, which is just a wild level of power and shows just how much power the helmet grants its user. This ancient helmet is apparently the most powerful magical artifact the world has ever known. It's the source of the Dr. Fate identity, and while its power and the things it can do has changed in some small and not so small ways over the years, some of the things it has done include granting its wearer enhancements to their intelligence. It has given them elemental control over water, wind, earth, lightning, and fire. Of course, telekinesis, like I said, but also invulnerability, superhuman strength, magic sense, astral projection, clairvoyance, chronokinesis, dimensional travel, divination, eldritch blasts, energy constructs, force fields, healing, illusions, invisibility, magnetic field manipulation, hypnosis, molecular reconstruction, necromancy, resurrection, telepathy, teleportation, biofission, and then of course, divine empowerment. But you get what I'm saying, right? Number 2, Dr. Manhattan. John Osterman was a nuclear physicist who found himself trapped inside of an intrinsic field experiment chamber, which completely removed his intrinsic field, tearing him apart and completely vaporizing him. But over the next few months, he began to reform himself, starting as a disembodied nervous system, circulatory system, and then with a skeleton and muscles, and then finally, after trying multiple times, he appeared fully. Tall, muscular, hairless, and glowing blue. Now, John sees the past, present, and future all at once, but it's not just his perception of time. He even figured out how to see the timelines of others and even possible timelines. He is basically nigh omniscient with an understanding of the universe on a cosmic scale. It's hard to even describe what his powers actually are. His powers and knowledge give him the ability to travel through time, and he has completely fractured the timeline into infinite alternate realities existing in all of them at the same time, or simultaneously, if that makes more sense. John possesses electrokinesis and elemental control, creating oxygen and water out of literally nothing. He perceives and understands things that no human brain could ever hope to. He has such a control over energy that he can even create life and accelerate evolution. He can manipulate matter to make himself and others intangible, alter his size, regenerate himself, disintegrate others, and cause molecules to accelerate and explode. His manipulation of space, time, and reality is what ultimately caused the New 52. He is a god in DC Comics. And finally, in at number 1, the Spectre. A lot like Dr. Fate and the Helmet of Fate, the Spectre isn't really one person. The Spectre itself is actually a cosmic entity and is the physical manifestation of God's vengeance on Earth. But this spirit, or entity, needs to be permanently bonded to a human soul in order to manifest itself. Jim Corrigan, a fallen Hal Jordan, and then Crispus Allen have been the main 3 humans to be the host for the Spectre. Now, being God's spirit of vengeance, you can probably guess that the Spectre is one hell of a capable being, and you're not wrong. Spectre has the power to do pretty much anything. The Spectre is nigh omnipotent. He has the capability to alter reality, literally erasing people from existence. He can alter his size to grow to any height. He can fire off mystical blasts of eldritch energy, and he has vast magical capabilities that allow him to cast spells to do pretty much anything else he wants to do. His wiki even says that his superhuman strength can, quote, be as strong as it needs to be, which I don't know why that matters. Kind of feels like a little pointless when he can literally alter reality and only be harmed by mystical and divine means, but yeah, just work here. The Spectre has infinite energy, has held apart 2 universes, can judge any reality in any dimension, and has the power to tear down heaven and hell. You can't really beat that.
Number 10, Nightwing. I love Nightwing. Okay, so lately Nightwing has been using not only his vigilante persona, but also his everyday civilian identity of Dick Grayson to do whatever he can to help save the people of Bloodhaven. If that doesn't make him unstoppable, I don't know what could. Both an everyday hero as Dick Grayson, using an inheritance that he was given from his father figure and in essence other dad, Alfred Pennyworth, to save the city by attempting to reform it while also reclaiming it from corruption, and as a superhero, operating as Nightwing and fighting physically against criminals and those corrupted by crime to prevent them from getting in his way. As I see it, the only thing that might stop Dick Grayson, aka Nightwing, in the future is the very real threat of sleep deprivation. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd and you love hearing about unstoppable heroes, we got a playlist for you. It's called our Top 10 Most Powerful playlist, and it's got sort of a similar vibe throughout. Number 9, Batgirl. Batgirl is Barbara Gordon, although Babs at this point is known by multiple names and is no longer the only Batgirl either. Barbara Gordon, above all else, I would say is a survivor, and because of that I feel like I would be remiss if I did not include her on this list. Batgirl has had a weird history. A history that similarly seems to haunt many female heroes over at DC, with many of them having been nerfed in some way when it comes to their abilities or their power set. For Batgirl, this happened when she was fatally wounded, shot through the spine by the Joker, and as a result became paralyzed from the waist down. While technically told in an out-of-canon story, this aspect of the Killing Joke did become canonized for some reason. But did Babs let the trauma of this incident and her newfound disability stop her from fighting crime? No, she did not. She ended up reinventing herself as a master hacker, computer genius, and intelligence expert, known as the Mysterious and Unknown Oracle. Thanks to experimental medical tech, Babs is also now back to being Batgirl, as she can walk again, and even still fights crime from both sides, both on the streets and from behind the screen. Truly, she can do it all, making her a very difficult, if not entirely possible, superhero to stop. Number 8, Ghostmaker. Is Ghostmaker a superhero? Perhaps a reluctant one in terms of altruism, but most definitely one in terms of someone doing some actual good and heroic deeds. Even in his own greatest feat story that he recanted to Batman, Batman had a sense that there was more going on for Min-Kwa Khan than he let on, in terms of why he was really after Madame Midas. And Batman was right. As was revealed in the final chapter of Minqua's story, Madame Midas tied back to his origin and the real reason why he wanted to become a vigilante in the first place, which tied back to what happened to his parents many years ago. So although they are very different characters, it turns out that Ghostmaker and Batman also share a lot of intrinsic similarities. In terms of his unstoppability, have you read the story where he goes up against Madame Midas? If that isn't an example of someone who cannot be stopped, I do not know what is. You can find this story continued in parts at the back of Batman issues 107 through 111 from the current run of the series, with the final chapter at the center of the Batman 2021 annual issue. Number 7. Mr. Terrific. Mr. Terrific is someone who we don't really talk about enough. Something that I've always felt was kind of weird over at DC is there are a lot of heroes who are super strong and also heroes who are super smart, and in general, they tend to be the same people. In other words, their heroes really can do it all. Both brains and bronze for the most part. But when it comes to Mr. Terrific, he is really all brains. And while he might not sound quite as unstoppable as the heroes who can do it all, I still think he deserves to be acknowledged for his genius, especially as that's all he has at his disposal for getting things done. Mr. Terrific has been a part of the Justice League Reserves, but is more commonly known for his affiliation with the Justice Society of America. While known for being a skilled fighter as well, his primary ability is his genius level intellect, being considered the third smartest man on Earth after Batman and Lex Luthor. Number 6. Mr. Miracle. When we say unstoppable, it can mean a variety of different things, depending on, but when it comes to Mr. Miracle, we are undoubtedly interpreting unstoppable to mean someone who can basically never be held. Scott Free is Mr. Miracle. He was once known to be the son of High Father of New Genesis, but was exchanged to become the ward of Darkseid when he was young, in order to barter a ceasefire between Apocalypse and New Genesis. In exchange for Scott, Darkseid gave up his son, Orion, to go live on New Genesis. Orion definitely got the better deal between these two boys. Scott actually grew up severely mistreated by Granny Goodness, who is known for training Darkseid's forces, including some of his most fearsome and powerful warriors, his female Furies. Scott from a young age would find that he had a natural aptitude for escaping, and would hone this over the years, celebrating whenever he won a moment of freedom. Eventually, he escaped, leaving Apocalypse and making his way to Earth. Mr. Miracle is considered the best escape artist in the world, and is even believed to be better at escaping than Batman himself, who is also known for pulling off many a daring escape. Number 5. Big Barda. Big Barda is another hero who often feels invincible in terms of her approach to heroism. Big Barda herself is a new god. She hails from Apocalypse, where she was once one of Darkseid's fearsome female Furies. While most born on Apocalypse are actually kinda like made in labs, selectively bred, Barda was actually born of love, something that makes her unique. While her mother's genes were intended to only be combined with others who would make the strongest and fiercest offspring, her mother, Big Burrito, one of Apocalypse's most fierce warriors, found a way to ensure that her first child was actually one resulting from love. However, once Darkseid found out, he took the child, placed her in the Gestatron, and then shipped her off to Granny Goodness. This is what makes Barda likely so inclined to heroics. Her father's seed was not chosen to match the traits that Darkseid most desired, and the power of love, as well as being a straight up badass, is also what generally compels Barda to be relentless when fighting for a cause she believes to be most just. Number 4. Plastic Man. Plastic Man is another completely unstoppable force over at DC Comics, even more so than some of the others on this list. This is because Plastic Man actually uses his stretching powers to be one of the coolest and most effective heroes around. We don't usually talk about him, but we should. Sure, he's not always the best guy, especially if we're talking about the New Earth continuity, but when it comes to heroics, there is almost nothing that can get in his way. He can get around any door thanks to his stretching powers and having complete molecular control over his body. He can manipulate his size, even impersonate other people by shapeshifting, and was even given duplication powers at one point, making him akin to like a really stretchy multiple man, which is pretty wild. Also, due to his elasticity, Plastic Man is super durable. He can't be torn apart and isn't super susceptible even to blunt force damage. The one thing he does seem to have a weakness to, though, like most plastics, is extreme heat as well as chemical solvents, you know, like acid. Number 3. Power Girl. One of my favorite heroes over at DC is Kara Zor-El. She hails from the reality of Earth 2 and is the alternate version of Supergirl in that reality. Although I'm sure some fans like myself might even think of Supergirl as Power Girl's alternate. Gasp. Still, Supergirl was technically around for longer, so really Power Girl is the alt here if there is an alternate. But despite being herself like an alternate version, Kara is unique in the sense that she really is her own character. In fact, it feels weird for me to even be acknowledging her as an alternate even though technically she is that. Power Girl, like her cousin Superman, is a Kryptonian, and with her Kryptonian physiology also comes a ton of superpowers that put her on a similar power level to Supes himself. While in the previous iterations Power Girl did have a regrettable weakness to organic materials, meaning that sticks and stones could actually break her bones, after New 52, this was no longer a thing. Thank goodness. Number 2. Val Zod. Val Zod as Superman is probably one of the most powerful alternates that we have in the DC multiverse. Val Zod, like Power Girl who came before him on this list, is another superhero from Earth 2. Val Zod was another Kryptonian who landed on Earth following Superman and Kara Zor-El. And although in this reality there is a Superman on Earth 2, Val Zod is still kinda like an alternate Superman because he's kinda got a bit of a similar story, although he's still also very much his own character, so kinda like Power Girl. Val Zod managed to befriend Kara before Krypton was destroyed, and as a result was one of the lucky few to escape its complete decimation. He landed on Earth but was intercepted by a man named Terry Sloan, who ended up manipulating Val Zod into helping him. Later, Val Zod was sought out by the Wonders of the World, the premier Earth 2 superhero team. They wanted his help in fighting a bizarro version of Superman that was created by Darkseid. Despite being a pacifist, Val Zod would eventually agree to help, as Kara could not bring herself to fight a version of her cousin. And at the time, I'm pretty sure everyone thought, that was actually Superman, but it wasn't. At that time, Superman was actually dead, having been killed by Darkseid. Val Zod was not stopped by the Earth 2 Bizarro Superman, fighting him to reveal the truth, that this Superman was indeed a clone and not the true Kal-El. Number 1. White Lantern. Kyle Rayner has to be one of the most well-rounded Green Lanterns around, which is probably why he was such a great candidate when it came to him taking on the role of a White Lantern. Kyle Rayner as a White Lantern wasn't just a member of the White Lantern Corps, which combines all the colors of the emotional spectrum together, but the leader of the Corps at one point. He is considered to be a master of all the different colors of the emotional spectrum, which is also why he makes such a powerful White Lantern, and why he makes such a powerful pick for our list. When it came to the Blackest Night event, the White Lanterns were really all that could be used against the foes of that event. When the world was facing its end as a result of it, even Necron could not stop the White Lanterns from saving the day. While a lot of people like to hype Hal Jordan, and I would still say that, Hal is pretty unstoppable for the most part, Kyle to me is the epitome of the most powerful Lantern, since he's not only a powerful Green Lantern, but also can really fit in basically any Lantern Corps, making him one of the most balanced and capable in terms of his connection to all of the emotions. I know people are gonna maybe disagree with me on that, but I encourage the disagreement. Let us discuss. Number 10. Rejected. Kind of. This one comes from JLA issue number 90 from the 1997 series. Here, Wonder Woman and Batman eventually share a kiss, which prompts Diana to look inside herself and see how she really feels about Bruce and the potential for a relationship with him. After looking deep within her subconscious by using the trans-consciousness articulator, try saying that 5 times fast, Diana decides it would be best if she and Bruce didn't actually end up together. She tells him as much, just as he seems to be ready to say the same. Although he also makes quite the face when she asks him if he felt being with her was worth risking all they already had as friends. And while Bruce seems to say that he agrees with Diana wholeheartedly, his face and the parentheses in his speech bubble seem to imply otherwise to me. All in all, I think both of these two ended up a little bit embarrassed by the whole ordeal, so it's a bit of a two-way street with this one. Batman's embarrassed, Diana's a little embarrassed. Number 9. Exposed a critical weakness. This one comes to us from one of the short stories included in the Wonder Woman 80th Anniversary 100-page Super Spectacular. The story is titled Dreamers, and it features a younger Diana who ends up, even as a kid, exposing a critical weakness in the Amazon's defenses for Doom's doorway. She ends up sneaking into the area with the help of Theo the shark, so great, hoping to get a better understanding of secrets and responsibilities she'll inherit when she becomes queen. By the way, in case you forgot, Diana can communicate with animals in marine life. She can talk to Theo. She's basically like a more bad Disney princess. Successfully sneaking into the area, Diana comes across Nubia, who is tasked with guarding the doorway, and reprimands Diana for sneaking in. Though she also seems a little bit impressed that Diana, being so young, was able to poke holes in the defenses of her much older and experienced sisters. Fortunately, Nubia's like, don't worry, I won't tell your mom, but I will have to tell her that hey, there's like a hole here. We need to fix that. We need to tell these sharks to keep their mouths shut. Number 8, defeat him to beat him. You know how we've mentioned the time that Batman incapacitated inadvertently the whole Justice League thanks to his contingency plans being stolen and then used by Ra's al Ghul? Well, he isn't the only one to defeat the Justice League. In fact, Wonder Woman defeated the Justice League without the interference or influence of anyone else. She did it single-handedly, and instead of it being a betrayal, it was actually to try and protect the League. However, the realization that Wonder Woman could take them all out so easily was likely pretty embarrassing when they came to afterwards. This all happened in League of One, where Diana defeated the League in order to protect them against a prophecy. You see, they had to go up against a dragon, but it was supposed to be the League's fate to both succeed in defeating the dragon, but also die in the process of winning that battle. To spare the rest of her friends and teammates, Diana beat them so that she could face the dragon alone and hopefully be the only one to both defeat it and possibly die in the process. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to show us some love in some other places here on the internet, head on over to our Facebook page, click that like, click that follow, and it really does help us out here at the channel, so thanks for doing that. Number 7, cheaters never prosper. This was like a whole thing where I feel like everyone was kind of embarrassed. Like pretty much everyone involved I feel like was embarrassed in this one. I know I was embarrassed watching this happen. Oof. We are talking about when in the DCEU in Wonder Woman 1984, Diana competes in an Amazonian triathlon against the other Amazons, despite being very much their junior. The princess is hopeful that she can win the competition despite her lack of experience and her youth in comparison to her sisters. However, when she loses her horse, she has to get resourceful in order to catch back up and ends up taking a shortcut to do so. However, apparently it turns out that this is cheating, and so her perceived victory is considered null and void by her mother, the hero, Queen Hippolyta, who also seems pretty disappointed, but still hopeful when it comes to her daughter's attempt. She's like, look, you can't cheat, but maybe next time. Maybe you get him next time. Don't take shortcuts. I was like embarrassed because I was like, really? That was cheating? Oh, okay. I would have done that too. I'm with you, Diana. Number 6, beats down a god with his own weapon. This one comes from Wonder Woman issue 773. Legacy numbering, where Wonder Woman takes on the god Thor. Not Marvel's Thor, who is very much a hero, but DC's Thor, who is still technically a hero, but also is kind of more of a brute than the Thor Odinson of Marvel's Earth 616. Wonder Woman ends up in DC's version of Asgard after the events of Dark Knight Death Metal. Here she learns that there seems to be a problem with souls going missing. She attempts to solve it, but ends up bonking heads with Thor, who isn't much for diplomacy. At least, not initially. Don't worry though, Diana puts him in his place, besting him in combat, taking Mjolnir, smashing him in the face with it before crushing it between her two hands. She's like, hammers, not really my thing. And of course, only then is Thor willing to listen to what she has to say. But don't worry, it all works out in the end. Everyone's able to sit at a table and have a discussion and a beer afterwards, so yay.
In at number 5 is Martian Manhunter. John Johns is another character that people really sleep on, but this guy is insane with his level of ability. There's a panel from the New 52 when Martian Manhunter is fighting off all the members of the Justice League at the same time. Let me break this down. With his left hand, Martian Manhunter is displaying his shapeshifting abilities, turning into a massive spiky club and whacking away both Cyborg and Hal Jordan Green Lantern. With his right hand, I think it's safe to say he's showing off his super strength, as he's got a power grip on the lasso of truth, and I'm assuming he's resisting its power, which is just a whole feat on its own. Behind him is Aquaman, who's like jabbing at Johns with his trident, but this is just going through the Martian Manhunter and is showing off his intangibility powers. And then we got Superman, who's flying around the fight at a decent distance away while Manhunter is using his heat vision to keep him there. And then the funniest part is Batman doing absolutely nothing, just picking up the Flash, who seems to have just been knocked down. It's almost a perfect display of his abilities, but leaving out a handful, and one of the biggest. John is the most powerful telepath on Earth, and one of the most powerful in the universe. Martian Manhunter has been called the most powerful being on the planet, and he's at the top of the list of people that Superman is afraid to fight. That's enough said right there. Number 4, Orion. Orion is a new god and the son of Darkseid, and as such he's not only incredibly conflicted, but also incredibly powerful. He has many forms and he has many abilities. Orion is repeatedly praised and stated to be a warrior with, quote, skill and ferocity second to none, which allowed him to become the greatest warrior on Apokolips while he was undercover there. He is is so astronomically strong that he has held open the hand of the god of strength and might, who had been threatening creation and ripping holes in reality with that strength. And he has stood against and beaten a sun-charged Superman one-on-one, something no one else in the Justice League was able to do. His durability is so powerful that he can tank star system destroying explosions. Orion is so fast that he moves with the speed of thought, and he's so smart that he was able to create the Genesis box, which can destroy and rebuild a universe. He can grow and shrink to any size, move through time, has a healing factor as if he actually needed one, has incredible super senses, and wields the Astro Force, which does a hell of a lot on top of everything, including matter and energy manipulation. But as an example, it once sealed holes in reality and knocked out Superman in a single shot. And that's all just Orion holding back and not using his true power called the Source of the Beast. And yet, he flies around space on a stupid looking scooter. And at number 3 is The Flash. Okay, look, I gotta tell you now that I'm actually gonna be talking about Wally West here. It's pretty well known that Wally is even faster than Barry Allen is, and I'd argue that he is the fastest speedster anywhere. In Flash Forward, Wally somehow went, quote, faster than the Speed Force, which means he went faster than the source of his own super speed. That makes no freaking sense! He can outrun Superman and Barry Allen. He outran the Black Flash, which is basically death, taking it to the end of the universe where it just ceased to exist. He has saved the Titans, who are all over the US, and he did it in 6.25 seconds. And my favorite point, there was a time that he saved the whole population of a city from a nuclear explosion as that explosion was going off, and he did it at like 1 billion times the speed of light. How does that even make sense? It doesn't. That's your answer. Wally West is insane. He can manipulate the Speed Force to make time basically irrelevant to himself, and he might as well just be classified as a god. Number 2, Firestorm. Where do we start with Firestorm? The main version of the character is Ronnie Raymond, who was fused with his professor Martin Stein. But there are a lot of other versions of Firestorm, a lot of whom are either one person or different fusions of people. It's annoyingly complex. The character, as you might guess, has pyrokinetic abilities plus durability, flight, reflexes, and super strength, but the character's main thing is that they can rearrange the molecules of matter. Now this ability is obviously incredibly OP, and it would simply take one story to make him completely god level, but for the most part, writers kind of misuse him. Potentially, this character could transform entire planets into whatever he wanted. With his powers, Firestorm's done some pretty godlike things. For example, Firestorm manifested a pink bunny mascot suit out of thin air around the villain's Skull Crusher. He's turned explosives into a jack-in-the-box and a cement truck into a giant teddy bear. It's hilarious, but like low-key, absolutely insane. On a way less hilarious note though, he also turned a girl into salt when he was resurrected as Deathstorm, and in Doomsday Clock, Firestorm accidentally turned a crowd of Russian protesters into glass. But outside of matter manipulation, Firestorm has had some impressive feats, like surviving the nuclear meltdown that originally created the hero and absorbing all the excess radiation, and then another time, Firestorm survived a straight-on nuclear explosion. An alternate version of the character called Deathstorm was able to absorb and capture 3 different Justice League teams into its Firestorm matrix, allowing the crime syndicate to take over Earth for a period of time. And in Infinite Crisis, Firestorm was able to seal a multiversal rift. Now in case you haven't noticed, we have kind of moved away from physically unstoppable characters to characters that are just pure science fiction gods. In at number 1 is Captain Atom. Nathaniel Atom was transformed into Captain Atom in the 60s after being semi-forced to participate in a potentially fatal experiment, piloting a device encased in an alien metal. Now the experiment didn't kill him. What it did do was atomize him and bond the alien metal to his flesh, giving him superpowers. Captain Atom's powers are like Firestorm's powers, but boosted to a whole different level, and with many more side abilities. Matter manipulation, energy manipulation, time manipulation, energy absorption, telepathy, spatial manipulation, quantum manipulation, force field creation, magic and mind manipulation, and control of the quantum field are all on this guy's roster of abilities. These powers have let him perform some insane feats like creating and destroying whole universes, fighting Superboy Prime, easily defeating a team composed of multiple versions of himself before absorbing them and creating an explosion powerful enough to destroy a universal space-time continuum. Captain Atom is potentially the most powerful superhero, certainly the most powerful who is also a member of the Justice League. Kicking off our list at number 10 is Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde, as we know her, is known for her ability to phase herself and others through solid matter. She also has the ability on Earth 1610, but in this universe she discovered she can also minimize the negative space around her atoms, becoming super dense and granting herself extra dimensional mass, giving her enough strength to smash through concrete and metal and punch Spider-Man through the air, making her as hard as a diamond and able to withstand attacks from the Phoenix, and even make herself weigh 90 tons at peak mass. But that's as well as her phasing ability, which can allow her to walk on air and water. And that's before her exposure to Giant Man serum to fight Galactus that leveled her up even more, allowing her to increase in her size and gain a healing factor. Definitely one of my favorite Ultimate X-Men, and not just because of her romance with Peter Parker, it's because she's unstoppable. And at number 9, Wolverine. Okay, so for the character of Wolverine in the Ultimate Marvel universe, he doesn't really measure up to his 616 Earth counterpart in a few ways. But despite that, it is hard not to admit that he's still quite the powerful character. His healing factor is a bit different than his Prime version and is called a survival factor. It essentially means he can survive being torn in half, departed from his head, and even blown up by a nuclear bomb. This version can also detect lies and still has his adamantium skeleton. The only issue is that in this universe the adamantium is not as strong and durable as normal Wolverine. Wolverine was also actually the first real mutant in the world, with the chemical that activated his X gene being taken, synthesized, and causing the emergence of other mutants. Logan himself was trained by Weapon X as an emotionless assassin, but when the Brotherhood hired him to take out Xavier, he proves he is more than just muscle, overcoming his brainwashing and joining the X-Men. Although, it may have just also been because he fell in love with the teenage Jean Grey. He does meet a sticky end at the hands of Magneto, but up until that point, he is pretty nigh unstoppable. Number 8. Thor. Thor in the Ultimate Universe just kicks off to a really great start. Thorleif Goldman is given to us as a man whose sanity is completely in question. The European government has been trying to create their own super soldier program, but instead of creating a serum, they opted to create a harness and a belt that would augment someone's strength and speed and invulnerability, plus eventually a hammer that lets its user manipulate the weather. Thorleif here was chosen as the best subject to test out the new tech, only he started to believe that he was actually the god of thunder, Thor, reborn in a human body. It's such a cool way to see this character interpreted, but it also makes it so much more satisfying when he eventually proves himself to be completely sane. Using the human technology and his thousands of years of experience as Thor, he becomes a celebrity and a hero. Some refer to him as a Boy Scout, always aiming for the betterment of humanity, and refusing to throw in with the industrial complex of Nick Fury's Ultimates. It took the US president doubling the foreign aid budget in order for Thor to finally agree to join the Ultimates, and he did so in spectacular fashion, bringing the team's fight with the Hulk to a decisive end. He then carries on as one of the strongest members of the Ultimates and redeems himself as a true god among men. Number 7. Rick Jones. In the regular 616 universe, Rick Jones is actually around quite a bit for just a regular dude. For example, he was the teenager who was just hanging out at the Gamma Bomb test site, and saving him was the whole reason that Bruce Banner was doused in gamma radiation and became the Hulk in the first place. Rick was also the alter ego of Mar-Vell of the Kree, smacking together his negabands in order to transform into the hero. He also eventually became another gamma mutate named A-Bomb, but in the Ultimate Universe, Rick's story didn't really start until around the time of Ultimatum. He doesn't have much of an explained history. Instead, not too long before Ultimatum happened, he was chosen by the Watcher to become the hero known as Nova and eventually Captain Marvel. With that, he gained some pretty insanely powerful powers, teleporting himself and others across galactic distances and even into other dimensions, self-sustained flight both on the planet and throughout space, projecting powerful blasts of energy, powerful enough to harm Galactus, and a form of cosmic awareness. He also doesn't have to deal with the multiple personality issues of his 616 self, which probably adds to his unstoppable nature. nature in the Ultimate Universe. Coming in at number 6 is Iron Man. The Tony Stark of the Ultimate Universe is pretty similar to his main Earth counterpart, only he's quite a bit more fun, less upsetting, and he eventually finds himself infused with a power that allowed him to physically and mentally interact with pretty much any computer ever. And that's a pretty good ability for someone who flies around in a technological suit of armor. The Antonio Stark of Earth 1610, or the Ultimate Universe, has basically become part man and part machine, being able to project his mind into computers and androids, allowing him to be nigh unkillable. Proven when the Master seemingly brought his end, but he became a non-physical entity which could manifest itself via computer systems. When actually physically inhabiting an Iron Man armor, he gains the usual abilities plus force fields and cloaking, but he's also got nanites in his bloodstream that he uses to control his suits, as well as open locks, defuse bombs, and interact with all forms of tech. This Ultimate Universe Iron Man is one of the most powerful versions of the character in the multiverse. Number 5, Supergirl. It's funny, when I look up how powerful is Supergirl, I found more stuff about how she isn't more powerful than Superman, as if saying that Kara Zor-El is stronger than Kal-El is insulting their own masculinity. Kara is technically older than Kal is, and she also never learned to hold back, meaning she goes in with 100% effort. This made her appear to be much stronger than Superman when she showed up on the scene, but Superman has been absorbing the rays of our sun much longer, meaning he inherently has more power and more knowledge of how to use it, and his ancestry makes him just better than most other Kryptonians. That's the same reason, or part of the reason, why he was stronger than Zod. So now all the Superman stans can just chill out for a second. Supergirl has the potential to have all the exact same abilities that Superman does, but at a lower level, which still makes her insanely capable and one of the strongest beings in the universe. She has fought Barry Allen pretty successfully, obviously not trying to hurt him though. She put up a decent fight against Wonder Woman, though she still got kinda destroyed, and beat the snot out of Cyborg Superman, and then there is Power Girl, the Earth 2 counterpart of Supergirl, who seems to be even stronger. Number 4, Swamp Thing. Alec Holland was a chemist and botanist who spent most of his efforts creating a chemical formula that could increase the growth speed of plants and even let plants grow in abnormal places. Unfortunately for Alec, the lab he was working in was sabotaged and he passed away in the ensuing explosion and fire while running out into the swamp where his lab resided. Since his body was covered in the formula he created, his consciousness was absorbed by the plant life of the swamp. In a new human-like plant body, Alec rose as the Swamp Thing. Alec was now an earth elemental and avatar of the green, essentially a god of plants. With unimaginable levels of superhuman strength, durability, and inability to feel pain, regeneration from plant life, he can move at the speed of light, alter his size drastically, shapeshift to allow himself to have other abilities like flight, he can duplicate himself, has chlorokinesis, or control over plants, which allows him to teleport through plant life, as well as, and thanks to his connection to the green, he can even move through time and possesses cosmic awareness. He's taken control of all the algae on Earth to remove most of Earth's oxygen in a show of strength. He's taken hits from and even restrained Superman and knocked the wind out of Wonder Woman. Swamp Thing is one of the more interesting heroes that DC has, and he deserves more respect on his name. Number 3, Black Adam. Whether you like it or hate it, Black Adam has been part of the Justice League. Black Adam has essentially the same base power that is possessed by Shazam, who made part 1 of this list, but for Black Adam, his ideologies and ruthless nature mean that he is simply much more capable than Shazam because he does not hold himself back. All we have to do to see how capable Black Adam is to take a peek at 2007's World War III event, or as I like to call it, Black Adam versus literally everyone. Black Adam single-handedly goes up against, beats the snot out of, and even takes the life of some of the combined forces of the JSA, the JLA, Captain Marvel, China's Great 10, the Phantom Stranger, Martian Manhunter, Power Girl, Wonder Woman, Stargirl, Plastic Man, Jay Garrick, several Green Lanterns, and more, all at the same time. And almost no one can take him down for the whole run of the comic. It's absolutely insane. Now, as for his whole inclusion in the Justice League, he was officially a member, but he also wasn't exactly good, which he never really is. We can discuss in the comments, but he is easily one of the strongest people to ever be a part of the Justice League. Number 2, Dr. Fate. I honestly thought Dr. Fate was just a part of the Justice Society and not the Justice League, but I was wrong, and I'll admit that. So, while he should have been in part 1, he is making part Part 2. Hate on me in the comments if you want, I literally don't care. One of the first magic-wielding superheroes ever, Dr. Fate debuted in 1940, way before Doctor Strange. Technically, Dr. Fate is a name used by the wearers of the Helmet of Fate, which was created by the powerful sorcerer Nabu, along with the Amulet of Anubis and the Cloak of Destiny. When Nabu passed away, his spirit was absorbed into these items, allowing him to live on through his hosts. Now, while Kent Nelson was the first, characters like Inza Kramer, Jared Stevens, Khalid Nassour, and a few others have wielded the powers of Dr. Fate throughout history, inhabiting the Tower of Fate and fighting magical threats. The Helmet of Fate itself grants the hero their vast magical powers, which include reality manipulation, matter manipulation, and time traveling, among many other abilities, plus the knowledge to cast spells that can do even more. And in at number 1 is Lobo. Lobo is basically what would happen if you took Marvel's Wolverine and Deadpool and smacked them together, added a pinch of the Punisher, and then made him as strong and tough as Superman and coated him in Gene Simmons face paint from the band Kiss. Now, as with all characters' feats, we need to take it with a pinch of salt, because this Zarnian in one story was able to take out the New Gods, who were all ridiculously powerful, but in the same story, he was captured and restrained by 3 Green Lanterns. He's been able to knock out Superman, regenerate himself from a pool of blood, has been deemed immortal and banned from both heaven and hell. He can track anyone he has met across the galaxy, is immune to psychic attacks, he's a genius, can break the fourth wall, can possess others, speaks 17,000 languages, can clone himself using his blood, can travel time and space with his motorcycle, and in one story, he literally takes out every single superhero, and man, he punched Santa's head off. That's just messed up. Lobo is almost completely unstoppable, and for some reason, he was very briefly part of the Justice League. Number 10, Swordsman. When the world's heroes gave up their lives in order to destroy the villain Onslaught, what they didn't know is that Franklin Richards had subconsciously created a pocket universe to save everyone. No one knew of this, and they spent an entire year on this counter-Earth reliving their new lives as heroes reborn, because that was the name of the comic. One of these heroes that seemed to be native to this pocket universe was a guy by the name of Swordsman. Swordsman was a member of the Avengers, and he was with them in their fights with Loki, Kang, and the Hulk, and eventually he became the last Avenger when the other Avengers went back to Earth 616. Now sadly, Swordsman ended up getting cancer, and in an effort to keep the world safe, he created a new team of heroes called the Remnants, leading them under his new name, Deadpool. Unfortunately, he had to retire from superheroing because of the cancer, but then, in a sudden twist, Deadpool/Swordsman learns that his entire reality and everyone in it is actually just the fabrication of a young boy named Franklin, and he goes absolutely mad and wants to destroy the entire dimension. He steals a SHIELD helicarrier filled with nuclear boom booms, and then launches all of them at the Watcher's Citadel on the moon, riding one of them along the way. Turns out he actually creates a tear in space and time and meets an evil core of Deadpool's, and he joins up. Number 9, Kidpool. I am putting Kidpool on this list for pretty much one reason. 2 words: lightsabers. Technically, it's 1 word, just let me live. Anyone who wields a lightsaber is automatically just better, okay? And when that person is a pre-puberty Wade Wilson, and he wields not just 1, but 2 lightsabers, is beautiful. Hailing from Earth 10330, Wade Wilson was a new student of the Xavier Orphanage for Troubled Boys, and he really was a troubled boy. Unfortunately, this means he was a little bit of a loner. He got put in detention with a kid version of Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, and so Wade and Scott decided to team up and escape from detention and go crash the prom so Scott could be with Jean Grey. At the prom, Wade ended up getting into a battle of fisticuffs with the kid-sized version of Logan, aka Wolverine, and the fight made the prom come to a halt and saw Kidpool get embarrassed in front of all the other kids. So he decided to leave, but just when that happened, he was confronted by 616 Deadpool and joined up with his good guy Deadpool Corps. Number 8, Hulkpool. Hulked Out Heroes is a nice, sweet little 2-issue comic that is honestly just the best. Basically, MODOK and the leader had gamma mutated a few pretty powerful heroes like Thor and the Thing and Wolverine and a whole bunch of them, and that on its own is dope. But they also gamma mutated Deadpool so that he is now Hulkpool, and he and Bob decided to head off to do their own thing. They head to Thunder's base and use her time machinery, and Bob sends Hulkpool back through time with the intention of crushing his normal weak Deadpool self. Because, I don't know, I guess paradoxes don't exist here. Instead, Bob accidentally sends Hulkpool on a trip through time, starting in 1717 on board a pirate ship where Ben Grimm, the Thing, has taken on the role of Blackbeard. Hulkpool joins him as his first mate, and they face off against a giant squid until Bob sends them back even further and they come face to face with Devil Dinosaur. After that whole chaotic journey, all three of them are time displaced to the Wild West where, of all people, they run into Hawkeye. Hulkpool travels again, but this time he ends up at the exact moment when Captain America and Bucky Barnes are in the process of completing the mission where Bucky tragically passes away, quote unquote, because we know what actually happens. And Hulkpool stops the whole thing from happening in the first place. Not only that, but he helps Cap take down the Red Skull and Germany's leader in one go. Not bad. He stops Matt Murdock from getting covered in toxic waste, Doctor Strange from getting in his car crash, the Fantastic Four from going to space, Donald Blake from becoming Thor, Peter Parker from being bit by a spider, Tony Stark from being taken hostage, and Bruce Banner from being gamma irradiated. All before he finally faces himself from the day before, only to find out that he's created a whole new timeline and that pirate Ben Grimm became the first president of the United States, and Bob is hailed as a god. Number 7. Venompool. Venompool hails from Earth 90211 from a reality stuck in the 1980s. In the story, the Beyonder decided to live the life of the party, and Spider-Man is still bonded with the Venom symbiote. Well, when Deadpool is hired by Galactus to kill the Beyonder, Deadpool tracked down his target to a nightclub, but found he was enticed into the Beyonder's partying lifestyle, getting Jerry curls in the process. While hanging out with the Beyonder in a flying limousine, because of course, Spider-Man breaks into the car out of nowhere and demands Beyonder remove the symbiote costume from him. In a freak moment, Spider-Man is attacked by the limo driver, and the symbiote ends up bonding with Deadpool instead. After a while, the Beyonder got sick of the Deadpool/symbiote amalgamation and ditches him, which you can imagine didn't sit very well with Venompool. He ends up going back to his mission and tries to bring down the Beyonder with a weapon called the Recton Expungifier. There's a lot to this story, but I don't want to rob you the satisfaction of reading it yourself, so we're moving on. Number 6. Gwenpool. Gwenpool came from a universe a lot like ours, meaning superheroes were all fictional characters in her world with origins and stories printed in comic books. Well, Gwen was obsessed with them. Thanks to a series of events, when she wound up in the Marvel universe, she put on a costume and became a mercenary as Gwenpool. Gwen is a regular human, but she knew all this was fictional inside a comic book, which allows her to completely break the fourth wall, which has helped her snag victories on multiple occasions, not to mention the fact that she knows everything about pretty much every hero. Her knowledge that everything is in a comic book also allows her to completely detach from anyone she is hired to take down, making her a pretty effective merc. Despite that, Gwen has grown to care for the people that inhabit her adopted universe, though she continues to believe that she is a fictional character in a comic book. Gwen's chief enemy is MODOK, the mental organism designed only for killing. Gwen was part of MODOK's mercenary group for a short time until the boss realized that Gwen possessed no actual skills at all, making him pretty peed off. Gwenpool is awesome, and she has the ability to bring people into the space between comic panels, which is just a level of meta that I'm not ready for right now.
Number 5. Dick Grayson. Well, not quite as adept and skilled as Batman is, Nightwing has the range of skills to excel as Bruce's replacement, which is what happens in the New Earth continuity after Bruce is believed to have been killed in a fight against Darkseid. Dick Grayson ends up taking up the Batman mantle in his adopted father's absence, believing that Gotham needs Batman and that it would be unwise to let it be known that the original Batman is gone and dead. While Nightwing has many accomplishments as Batman, I more wanted to discuss him because I believe that not only is Dick Grayson a great option when it comes to the Batman legacy, but that recently, even outside of that, he's definitely proven himself to be unstoppable as a character, with or without the Batman mantle attached to him or even affiliated with him. Lately, he's been excelling as Nightwing, the protector of Bloodhaven, and is returning once more to lead the Titans, who will become the protectors of Bloodhaven, and obviously the protectors that Bloodhaven is desperately needing right now. A symbol of hope for a place that is sometimes presented presented as being even more corrupt than Gotham. However, it should also be noted that before this, Dick was also offered the opportunity to lead the Justice League, following the events of Dark Crisis, with Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman all seemingly coming together to decide that Nightwing was the best candidate to lead a new league in their absence. Of course, even though Nightwing was flattered by this, he chose instead to bring the Titans back and return as their leader. Or well, I mean, the Titans never really went anywhere, but he was like, we're gonna do Titans now instead. Ba-ba-ba. Number 4. Batman Red Sun. Batman Red Sun is definitely one of the most unstoppable Batmen around. He hails from Earth 30, an alternate world where Superman's Kal-El instead fell to Earth and landed in Soviet Russia, growing up there and becoming a Russian hero as opposed to an American one. Batman is a hero who actively fights against the Soviets, seeking revenge for the death of his parents, who were murdered by Stalin's police. Batman eventually is manipulated into taking on Superman himself, and while he does fail to kill Superman, Batman still makes an impressive attempt there. Especially impressive when you consider that this Batman, like so many others, is completely unpowered. And despite not physically winning that fight, choosing to die rather than allow himself to be captured in the end, Batman still manages to reveal the truth about the people that Superman works for, turning Superman against them and thereby getting his own revenge, despite not being alive to see it fully realized. Batman also lives on after the initial man's death that represented him, inspiring others in Russia to take up the mantle in his place and continue the fight for justice. So although the original guy that was Batman in that reality is dead, Batman still lives on and becomes unstoppable because legacy. Number 3. God of Knowledge. While still technically the main continuity Batman we currently have in the DC universe, and not in the traditional sense and alternate as in someone from another Earth or an Elseworld story, as we counted Dick Grayson before, who is also in the main continuity, I would like to present this version of Batman who represents a specific time in Bruce's life when he happened to gain the powers of Mobius, or at least the power of Mobius's chair. This was a device and tech that was initially used by Mobius, aka the Anti-Monitor, but given to the new god Metron by Mobius, before Batman ended up taking it for himself during Darkseid War. The chair grants whoever sits upon it vast knowledge, and also allows whoever pilots it to travel through time and through to various dimensions. In other words, this made Batman pretty insanely unstoppable. During Darkseid War, various heroes and villains took on new identities, becoming not new gods in terms of, the group of cosmic beings, but new gods in terms of them becoming gods, which was new gods, not new gods. Number 2. Batman in Bethlehem. In an alternate future, Damian Wayne ends up becoming Batman, and everything goes pretty crazy as a result. He takes up the mantle following the death of Dick Grayson, who ends up becoming Batman after Bruce retires. Following the death of his adopted brother, Dick Grayson, Damian sees killing as kind of the only way to deal with criminals like the Joker, who ended Dick's life in this case. However, Bruce disagrees, refusing to let Damian take up the mantle of Batman initially, and eventually kicking him out of the Batcave and Bat family as a result of his actions. Eventually, Damian would earn his father's forgiveness and his respect once more, and go on to take up the mantle, continuing to be Batman even after both Bruce's and Alfred's deaths. However, he would once again be seen as a killer, a much crueler and less forgiving version of Batman in the future. Damian even goes so far as to sell his soul to seemingly the devil, and in the end, Gotham ends up the victim of a nuclear attack in a harsh and chaotic apocalyptic futuristic world. Still, Damian never gives up, and even goes on to renegotiate his bargain with Simon Hurt, who is suggested to be the devil here. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. Batman Who Laughs is hands down one of the most despicable and unstoppable Batman we've ever encountered, I think, in the comics. What makes him so unstoppable? Well, he's kind of an unreal combination of Batman and Joker blended together, and I would say it's that makes him so interesting, unique, and ultimately unpredictable and unstoppable. I mean, think about it. He has all the logic and skills of Batman, but the level of cruelty and off-the-wall thinking of the Joker. When he sets his mind to something, usually the Batman Who Laughs ends up on top and gets what he sets out to get. And I know what you're going to say, but Amanda, hold on a minute. Wasn't he defeated during Dark Knight's death metal? Yes, he ultimately was, but at the same time, look at all he accomplished before that. I mean, this is the guy who was able to take down one of the most powerful villains out there, Perpetua, who is older seemingly than time itself, known as one of the hands of creation, and is the mother of both the Monitor and Anti-Monitor, as well as, the World Forger. So that's pretty wild to me.
And in at number 10 is Superman. We are kicking off this list with what everyone would expect to see, because it's just not interesting to have him any lower. That's my reasoning and I'm sticking to it. Superman is the baseline. He is what we compare almost all other DC superheroes to when we are talking about power. Superman at his base level can destroy planets, tank hits from just about anyone including Darkseid himself, and he has a whole plethora of abilities that some are even forgotten when writers use Superman in a story. The thing about Superman is that he almost has no upper limit. If this guy wants to, he will fly into not only our sun, but multiple suns throughout the universe to drink up their radiation in order to gain a massive power boost. He's been able to break the barrier between dimensions, and in some stories he has existed until the very end of the universe, splitting himself into multiples so that he can be a hero for the entirety of that universe, although that wasn't technically canon. The point is, while he is arguably without equal because of the fact that he has no real limit, there are a few members of the League who could give him a run for his money. In at number 9, Shazam. With the mystical power of 6 gods, Shazam is not just said to be the physical equivalent to a baseline Superman, but he can almost definitely take on Superman himself, as the Man of Steel has no resistance to magic. Shazam has actually proved himself to be faster than and also able to knock out Superboy Prime, who is one of the most powerful versions of Superman ever, able to shake reality with punches, that kind of thing. But this isn't a list about people who can take on Superman. Batman has stated that Shazam is one of the most powerful beings on planet Earth for a reason. He has KO'd the god of evil and father of Darkseid, Yuga Khan, with one punch. And speaking of gods, Shazam has been able to defeat the DC versions of Ares, Atlas, and Thor, all of whom are incredibly powerful gods. While he is astoundingly strong, fast, and durable, Shazam's true potential, I think, comes from his natural affinity for magic, which can potentially allow him to do almost anything, which I know to be true because of another magic-wielding leaguer. Number 8, Zatanna. A lot of people sleep on Zatanna, and that's a mistake. Zatanna is part of the Homo Magi race, giving her a genetic talent for magic that makes her one of the greatest magic users in the multiverse. Zatanna was born with magic, but she's not limited by that. With the addition of learned magics, Zatanna can cast a whole multitude of spells that allow her to do things like travel dimensions, summon objects and beings, perform telekinesis and advanced telepathy, redirect and return attacks, mess with the weather or even time of day, manipulate her own size or transform into basically anything, become intangible, and manipulate magical versions of the elements. But that's all the basic stuff. She can cast spells that can manipulate reality, alter the molecular structure of objects, and move forward, backwards, and freeze time itself. And that's not even getting into what she could do with black magic. Sure, she may not be as physically capable as some other characters on this list, but she has the potential to make child's play of most of them despite that fact. If you guys are enjoying this list so far, make sure to drop a like and subscribe here at Top 10 Nerd. And make sure to let us know any topics for videos you want to see in the future. But coming in at number 7 is Wonder Woman. As 1/3 of DC's Trinity, Wonder Woman has to make this list. Where Superman is a being of raw power, that, plus his outstanding moral character, are what makes him so unstoppable. But then we have Wonder Woman, who is almost equal in terms of strength, speed, and durability to the Man of Steel, but she's leagues and bounds above the guy in terms of her skill. In a melee fight, she will outmatch pretty much anyone, and she will be quicker than almost anyone, including Superman, because she doesn't even need to think when fighting. She's just a natural. I don't think we can actually show it, but my favorite Wonder Woman panel, which I think comes from Injustice, is literally her snapping Superman's arm using her elbow while he screams in pain and Harley Quinn is in the background like rooting her on. It's fantastic. But even in regular continuity, she's been able to last a hot minute against a mind-controlled Superman who was not holding back, and she could have even taken him down if she wanted to. And then we talk about death metal, where Wonder Woman got powered up to the point she was taking on beings of cosmic levels of power using a magical chainsaw. Then she went on to Valhalla, of all places, but even managed to get out of there and come back to Earth. And that's the other thing. Wonder Woman has access to not only magical artifacts, but she was gifted with magical abilities by the goddess Hecate, or however you pronounce that. And those powers were leagues above Zatanna's own magical prowess. And we've already talked about how powerful magic can be. There isn't much on Earth that can really stand against Wonder Woman. And at number 6 though is Green Lantern. I think a lot of the time Green Lantern is just thought of as the guy who can make breakable green light constructs, but that is just a huge oversimplification. To prove my point, all we gotta do is look at some of the things done by the most powerful Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. Hal is essentially pure willpower, which is what powers his Green Lantern ring. This means he has incredibly intense levels of strength and durability, but anything he does with his ring is just better than any other lantern. And that's before he even forged his own ring, which no other Green Lantern has ever done. Hal has such control over his ring that he has been able to pull a spaceship out of the gravitational pull of a star, but he has also used the ring to attack nanites inside his own bloodstream. He can destroy entire planets, one-shot KO Superman, hit people so hard that it warps reality, and then as most people know, he destroyed every single member of the Green Lantern Corps. Now after creating his ring, he was even more powerful than that. He literally started to become a being composed of will, which doesn't even really make sense, but means he can't really die. He obliterated Sinestro, who was powered up by Parallax. He moved so fast he broke the Speed Force barrier, tanked a massive blast from Mogo, who was a Green Lantern that's a planet, and Mogo was being boosted up by hundreds of other lanterns when that happened. And he created hard light constructs that were actually alive and couldn't be beaten by the Green Lantern and Sinestro Corps combined. Absolutely insane.
Number 5. Last Son of Earth. The Clark Kent featured in the Last Son of Earth story is very much a mirror image of the classic version of the character. In this Elseworlds tale, Jonathan Kent is a scientist on Earth who discovers that a meteor is headed for the planet. He builds a rocket and sends his newborn son out into space, where he ends up on Krypton and is discovered by Jor-El. Jor-El spends years adapting Clark to Krypton's harsh conditions and raises him as his own son. Kal-El is on an archaeology dig when he discovers a Green Lantern ring, which allows him to prevent the destruction of Krypton. He returns to Earth to see if anyone survived and discovers a post-apocalyptic society with one tribe being led out of the Daily Planet by their chief, Perry White, and an evil murderer named Lex Luthor being in charge of the other. Clark discovers that his time adapting to Krypton's atmosphere has given him superpowers while on Earth, giving him both the powers of Superman and Green Lantern. He manages to help restore the Earth, transforming it into a utopia with Krypton's technology. Number 4. Kingdom Come Superman. The Superman on Earth 22 is a bit older and wiser than the usual Superman, but he is no less powerful. He comes from a world where most of the classic heroes have retired, only to be replaced by violent and angry new heroes who have no value for human life. After Kansas is wiped out in a superhero accident, Superman comes out of retirement to help get the world back on track and to reform the Justice League. As he has gotten older, he has actually developed an immunity to kryptonite, leaving only his weakness to magic as an effective way to fight him. He was briefly transported to the main Earth, where the Justice Society kept him prisoner until they could gauge whether or not he was a threat. However, when he heard that a woman was about to jump off of a roof, he escaped custody and defeated the entire JSA in combat just to save the woman's life. Number 3. Red Sun Superman. Superman Red Sun asks the question, what if Superman didn't land in the United States, but instead landed in Soviet Russia? He is raised to be a Soviet Superman and defends the ideals that Stalin promotes. He eventually replaces Stalin and takes over the Soviet Union, using his armies and his powers to force every other country on Earth to fall in line and join the Union. The only country that doesn't join is the United States, that is being run by President Lex Lex Luthor, who must stand up to Superman and prevent him from taking over the world. Throughout the book, we see awesome displays of power from the Man of Steel, with him being so effective that the people in his own country don't even bother wearing seatbelts anymore because they know he will save them. He fights versions of several of the heroes, such as Green Lantern, who he defeats with ease, telling him that a weapon that can create anything you can think of is useless against someone who can move faster than thought. Number 2, All-Star Superman. In All-Star Superman, the Man of Steel rescues a manned sun mission that is under attack by Lex Luthor. He stops the attack, but it turns out that Luthor's real plan is to cause him to overdose on solar radiation, giving him what is essentially a terminal disease. Superman is dying, but the extra solar radiation actually makes him stronger for the time he has left. He develops an immunity to kryptonite and becomes strong enough to lift 200 quintillion tons without breaking a sweat. It is because of these heightened powers that Superman is able to fly into the sun at the end of the story in order to prevent it from dying by building it an artificial heart to keep it alive. Number 1, Silver Age Superman. When Superman was introduced in 1938, it was considered the beginning of the golden age of superheroes. During this period, he slowly developed a lot of the powers we associate with him today. He was originally able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, and this eventually morphed into flying, things like that. His stories were quite grounded and usually featured him going up against gangsters and slumlords who were taking advantage of the people of Metropolis. This all changed in the Silver Age. In the Silver Age, Superman was going up against more and more outlandish sci-fi plots, which were known for giving Superman more and more powers as the stories went on. These included kind of weird powers like super ventriloquism and hypnotism, but they also beefed up his standard powers. Superman has of course always had super strength, but in the Silver Age he was so powerful that he could tow an entire galaxy's worth of planets behind him with a big chain. One sneeze from Silver Age Superman was powerful enough to wipe out a solar system. So yeah, he was pretty powerful. He was the Superman of Earth 1, and was actually the main Superman until the continuity reboot of 1986, Crisis on Infinite Earths, where we were introduced to the New Earth Superman, who other than during the New 52 era, has been our main Superman ever since. Silver Age Supes is actually too powerful, and was nerfed quite a bit for the New Earth era, but he is now considered an alternate Superman, and is by far the most powerful version of the character.
Number 10, Constantine, or Constantine, or whatever you want to say. John Constantine is a really fun inclusion for this list because he is extremely powerful and not powerful at all at the same time. John can wield magic for sure through years and years of learning, training, traveling, but he doesn't have any kind of magical affinity or any kind of beneficial magical family heritage. John relies on actual magic as a very last resort, and the magic he knows how to use isn't anything to scoff at. He has even, very momentarily, been able to hold back Dr. Fate, but using magic comes at a cost and he knows this. So what Constantine prefers is trickery. Lies, deceit, traps, his wits, weapons, artifacts, backup, and calling in favors. John smokes. He drinks, he's in his middle ages, and he ain't in the greatest of health. He can throw a punch for sure, but most people are a physical match for him. But at the same time, he has been able to trick, outsmart, or overpower gods, demons, and angels, Batman, Superman, Darkseid, Swamp Thing, Dr. Fate, the Phantom Stranger, the Spirit of Justice, the Spectre, who's the Spirit of Vengeance, Lucifer, and even the Presence, who is basically DC's version of God. He tricked the Presence into curing John of cancer and granting him divine protection by selling his soul to 3 separate Hell Lords who would start a civil war over his soul, which would spill out onto Earth and into heaven. You don't sleep on this bad-mouthed middle-aged man. Number 9, I, Vampire. In comparison to most of the other characters who have made this list, Andrew Bennett as a vampire is kinda squishy. Vampires are practically indestructible and can regenerate any damage done by consuming blood. They have superhuman strength, speed, reflexes, stamina, can transform into bats, wolves, rats, and mist, and have enhanced senses and a bit of psychokinesis. But despite that, they have some major weaknesses that pretty much everyone is aware of, with a big one being the frickin' sun, unless they can find a way to temporarily make themselves immune. But for I, Vampire, he has a peculiar ability to eventually automatically revive himself after he is killed, even if he becomes a pile of ash from the sun. He has even survived the end of the universe. Now, this ability is a bit of a mystery even to Bennett himself. himself. When he survived the end of the universe, it was at the will of the presence, leading some to believe that this may be true in all cases, but that's not actually confirmed. The point here is that he is literally unstoppable because he will always just come back. Is it cheating? I don't know, maybe, but if it is, then our next spot absolutely is cheating. Number 8, Dead Man. While Vampire will come back from the dead every time, Dead Man is already dead, and therefore pretty much can't be touched except by magical artifacts, or magical beings, but even then he can usually give them a good beating. Boston Brand is a ghost. Sorry. Giving him some pretty limited abilities like intangibility, flight, and invisibility, plus a little bit of dimensional travel, which is a bit more useful. But where he truly becomes powerful is in his ability to possess other people. Now, of course, this ability isn't always reliable because there always needs to be some kind of challenge to nerf an ability like this. Batman, for example, is a struggle because of his incredibly strong mind, and there are a lot of strong-minded individuals in comic books. Plus, he can't control people who have already been hypnotized or who are immune to being possessed, like the Spectre. But there are still quite a few extremely powerful characters who he could potentially, and has, possessed. Judy Moon, the Enchantress, Swamp Thing plus the Green, Pantheon, who is an elder god, and the multiversal entity known as the House of Mystery have all been possessed by Deadman. But there's no reason he couldn't possess Superman, Wonder Woman, and a large variety of other heroes and villains. Number 7, Animal Man. Thanks to an encounter with some rather strange aliens, Bernard Buddy Baker gained access to the morphogenic field, otherwise known as the Red. This field basically allows Buddy to absorb and use different attributes of nearby animals while still being a human. So he has been able to move his eyes independently like a chameleon, he's been able to ram against a speeding car with the abilities of a rhino, he can fly by tapping into birds, he's regenerated a whole lost limb by tapping into an earthworm, gained the strength to lift a car by tapping into a spider, and he's ran at 75 miles per hour by adopting the abilities of an ant. But his abilities have done some even more surprising things, like, for example, when a villain cut Buddy off from any nearby animals, he took on the attributes of the bacteria inside that villain's body, allowing Animal Man to duplicate himself, and he can even tap into the attributes of extinct animals like dinosaurs, which has allowed him to punch out a T-Rex and survive being crashed into by a plane by borrowing the abilities of both a Stegosaurus and a rhino. And that's another thing. Over time, he's received power boosts that allow him to use multiple abilities at once, and then to even use the abilities of any animal in the universe, like when he used the power of a Sun Eater, which let him fly across the galaxy in an instant. He's even absorbed the powers of Krypto, Superman's superdog. Number 6, Aquaman. The ocean is a genuinely terrifying and interesting place. As such, the Atlanteans of DC Comics possess a few advantages over us regular humans. They have super strength, speed, endurance, and durability, all in order to help them survive the mind-boggling pressure at the insane depths of the ocean at which they live. But Aquaman himself is a royal Atlantean, which means that he is a super Atlantean. His strength and durability has allowed him to close the Marianas Trench, go toe-to-toe with powerful foes like Martian Manhunter, Lobo, and Wonder Woman, and tank blasts from Starro. His speed, which is often forgotten about, allows him to swim at 10,000 feet per second, and he can move even faster without the pressure or drag of water, allowing him to dodge bullets and catch lasers. But Aquaman has quite a few other advantages. His control over sea life has helped him in a large majority of his fights, with his underwater allies coming to his aid and helping him do things he probably couldn't do alone, like creating a massive tsunami with whales. His telepathic skill is actually quite impressive as well. Some of my favorite feats include him telepathically controlling a Green Lantern ring, reading the Martian Manhunter's mind without permission, and controlling a space dragon. Now, for a while he had a hand that was a hook and then became a magical mystical water hand that could do a whole other level of feats, but I'm out of time, so we're moving on.
Number 5, Can't Stop Killing. It's hard to tell who would be more embarrassed in this scenario, Wonder Woman or all of her friends who try to reach out to her and really epically fail. This all goes down in a dark multiverse tale, a darker version of War of the Gods. Here, Wonder Woman ends up losing her mother and in her darkness finds herself possessed and overtaken by Hecate, who uses Wonder Woman as her host to reach out and conquer Earth. Wonder Woman's friends try to stop Diana and reach her, but she's trapped deep within a pit of despair after having not properly dealt with her emotions, basically. Struggling to find her way back to love and hope, the only solution is for many magic users of DC to band band together, sacrificing themselves in order to defeat Hecate, but still unable to bring back Diana. Whew. Zatanna, as a result, keeps Hecate in Diana's body locked away, hoping to one day find a cure for the possession so she can bring back her friend once more. Number 4. Rejected. But for real this time. Real rejection. So this isn't rejection of the romantic sort, but it is the rejection of a kind of, like a team-up sort, I guess you could say. In Wonder Woman the Hecate, Bruce and Diana end up at odds with one another. As such, the two end up in a fight with one another. Wonder Woman handily ends up defeating Batman in that fight, placing her boot on his head as he lays in a puddle, and urges him to not get back up. Batman decides to surrender, which I think is a good choice. Instead of fighting back, Batman tries a new tactic and begs for Diana's mercy and protection. This shocks Wonder Woman as Batman clings to her boots. He calls on the age-old ritual and rites to seek her power and her aid. Wonder Woman, however, reminds Bruce of his history, saying that in times previous, heroic men have been denied, as she chooses to deny him now. Ouch. Looks like Batman needs to brush up on his reading of the Iliad, apparently. Number 3. Poking eyes and breaking arms. And in Justice Gods Among Us Year 4, there is a brutal showdown between Superman and Wonder Woman that is basically orchestrated by Batman. The two face off in a trial by combat style fight in order to settle a dispute, with Wonder Woman being forced to fight as she was nominated by Batman, even though she and Supes are kinda still technically on the same side here. However, this just means that in the end, Diana is able to use Clark's hesitancy to her advantage. She not only defeats Clark, but she does so brutally. At first it seems as though he'll come out victorious, but the fight ends with Diana clearly on top, attempting to gouge out his eyes before succeeding in breaking his arm. Youch. It's not easy to break a Kryptonian's arm, by the way. That is a lot. Number 2. Defeated by love? That's right, Wonder Woman actually defeated someone with basically just the power of love. Although I suppose I shouldn't say like just the power of love. After all, love is kinda Wonder Woman's biggest ideal, I'd say, and it also is extremely powerful if you know how to use it. Case in point, when Diana went up against a villainous Donna Troy. Donna seemingly had the upper hand in the fight, claiming to be the more powerful of the two, designed to be a more perfect version of Diana when Wonder Woman decided to bust out one of her most effective weapons, the lasso of truth, which unlike Ghost Rider's pen and stare, almost always actually works on the folks that she targets it with. I know there's gonna be Ghost Rider fans coming for me in the comments. They're gonna be like, look, the pen and stare is great, but I'm just saying, I can give you so many examples of times it didn't work. I think it's almost equal, it's like a 1-for-1. Compelled to see and realize the truth, Diana reminded Donna of what it really meant to be an Amazon. It's not about power, you see, or strength, it's about being part of a culture, being part of a family, being a sister. That is the most important defining word of Amazonian culture. Sister. And with that one word and realization, Diana handily defeats her sister Donna using nothing but truth and love. Number 1. The truth comes out. One of the most memed Power Girl and Wonder Woman moments comes from the 2007 The Brave and the Bold series in issue number 7. While many people have spun this series of panels with their own reason for why Kara is so shocked at her answer to Wonder Woman's question, changing up just what that answer is, the real dialogue sees Kara handing back Wonder Woman's lasso of truth and while passing it over to her, answering Diana's question of, where she's off to next. Power Girl responds in the comic that she's off to go kill Superman, shocking both herself and Diana, and leaving her super embarrassed while Diana is convinced that something must be wrong with Power Girl. Perhaps she's brainwashed or she's possessed, as the lasso obviously compels those it touches to only tell the truth. So, I mean, she's gotta be telling the truth. Wow, what an embarrassing way to realize that that's going on. Number 10. The Dawnbreaker. The Dawnbreaker was so unstoppable that he managed to destroy his entire world. This version of Bruce Wayne hails from the Dark Multiverse, from Earth -32. Here Bruce's story goes as anticipated in the beginning, with him being just a child when his parents were gunned down by Joe Chill. However, young Bruce in this tale is instead granted a Green Lantern ring following his parents' deaths, and ends up joining up with the Green Lantern Corps. The oath of Green Lanterns, though, does not necessarily resonate with Bruce, with him only seeing his ring as a means for him to get his revenge. Despite the fact that the Green Lantern's rings normally cannot be used to kill, Bruce pours his inner darkness, his void of emotion, into this ring, corrupting it and thereby willing it to kill, and even using it to temporarily raise the dead. He goes on to kill all of the criminals of Gotham, face off with the Green Lantern Corps and successfully kill them and the Guardians of the Universe, and of course destroy the entire world. Well, his entire world. a world. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like? Number 9. Helena Wayne. Helena Wayne goes on to take up the Batman mantle on Earth 2. The New 52, Earth 2 that is. This version of Helena Wayne was helping her father to fight against an army of parademons as his Robin when she was transported to another world. Now on this Earth 2, Helena Wayne is actually the daughter of Bruce, so yeah. Despite the fact that her father did not survive that battle, Helena and Supergirl both did, being transported to the Prime Earth continuity. While here they initially were also unstoppable in their search to find a way home, at least initially. Despite the fact that Huntress, aka Helena Wayne, the daughter of Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, would eventually give up on this dream, she and Supergirl would also eventually be returned home to Earth 2. Once there, Helena would go on to also take up the mantle of Batman. Number 8. The Batman. I think one of the most unstoppable Batmen I've seen recently, despite his youth, would be our Year 1 Batman from the now Elseworlds DCU movie The Batman. In this film, Batman is played by Robert Pattinson and is presented as a version of Bruce who is still kind of struggling to find his footing in the city of Gotham as a hero. In fact, many people actually fear and revile Batman at this point, GCPD included, who, other than Jim Gordon, are not really on his side. However, despite being less experienced in comparison to some of the older, more established versions of the character, I would say that Batman, against all the odds here, is still impressively unstoppable. This likely has to do with the fact that he is not only attempting to prove himself as an ally and force of good to the city and its people, but also kinda to himself, trying to find a purpose in a world that he seems to have become increasingly disconnected from. In the end, Batman realizes that hope above all else is one of the most important things, not fear, and we see him begin to make his way down the path to becoming the hero that Gotham needs. Number 7. Jason Todd. In Battle for the Cowl, Batman is believed dead, and a final message is passed on to the Bat family members. Among those summoned to hear Bruce's final words is Jason Todd, former Robin, sometimes villain, and all around just a pretty complex character and vigilante. With Bruce absent, Jason believes this is his opportunity to prove himself and take up the cape and cowl. As Batman, Jason is relentless, not shying away from bloodshed or killing the criminals he comes up against, and dons a heavily armored suit and the former mask of Michael Lane's Azrael when he was the Bat Devil mask. This version of Batman is not against using guns, making him even more deadly, especially when he obviously shoots to kill. Jason Todd's version of Batman managed to best Nightwing, Tim Drake, and Catwoman in battle, successfully defeating all of them, although in the end, Nightwing did return and managed to defeat Jason, but this was also in part due to Dick gaining the upper hand in their final fight. Well, I mean, not their final fight, because you know, this is comics, so there's a lot of stuff that happened after this, but just in regards to this specific story, I mean. Number 6. Dark Knight Returns. Of course, we have to have Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller's dark, futuristic take on an older Bruce who chooses to return from retirement and don the cape and cowl once more. I mean, he is kinda the definition of unstoppable, is he not? This version of Batman ends up literally leaving retirement as an old man to come back and kick some butt. And he does a pretty freaking great job, I gotta admit, even almost beating Superman before seemingly dying of a heart attack, but even then, not really. So while Superman seemingly wins the ultimate and famous fight between the two of them, it's revealed that in the end, it may have all just been part of Bruce's elaborate plot, meaning that as always, the detective also wins in the end, especially because Superman's kinda like, yeah, I know he's still alive, it's all good.
Number 5. Reed Richards. Okay, so in the Ultimate Universe, Reed Richards was a brilliant scientist and leader of the Fantastic Four, as he is in the 616 continuity as well. But we do have to acknowledge something. This Reed does not stay a superhero for very long. In fact, he becomes one of the greatest villains in the Marvel multiverse. When Magneto unleashed the ultimatum wave on New York, his son passed away, and Sue Storm rejected his marriage proposal, Reed started to go a little bonkers. He blew up his family home along with his parents and faked his own de-lifing. He then planned attacks on some major buildings and Peter Parker's home. Eventually becoming one of the most sinister villains in the Ultimate Universe, the heroes found him beat him up, and Johnny Storm disfigured him. And then they left him floating in the negative zone. Reed then decided that maybe, you know what, this Earth kinda sucks. So he elongated his brain, spent 1,000 years in the distant future creating genetic superhumans, and started calling himself the Maker. Reed returned to Earth and set out on a twisted quest to make the world perfect, quote unquote. He took out all the Asgardians in an attempt to understand Thor's power and used antimatter to attack Washington. The Maker went on to do a lot of incredibly twisted stuff, fighting the heroes of his own Earth, but eventually the heroes of Earth 616 as well, after the destruction of his own universe. Number 4, Captain America. In the Ultimate Universe, things are a bit more grounded, as some would say. This basically means that things are gritty and Captain America is kind of a bit of a jerk. He's a nationalist. He kinda hates on France sometimes. He will bend the rules to get the job done. He's got all the ideological traits you'd expect out of a World War II era white male, and he wasn't even the first successful candidate for the super soldier serum. Here, that honor fell on Nick Fury himself. But speaking of the serum, this version of Captain America, while also being a bit of a jerk, is actually superhuman, as opposed to being just a peak level human being like his 616 counterpart. This power boost, mixed with the fact that he is very willing to cheat and bend the rules to get the job done, means he is a powerful character and should be as feared as he is respected. Maybe he isn't better in terms of morals or being a great guy, but he's what a real Captain America would probably be like in my cynical brain, and in terms of sheer strength and power, he is truly unstoppable and the best leader the Ultimates could really ask for. Number 3, Miles Morales. Miles Morales, like the Maker, is one of a few characters that came out of the Ultimate Universe that were so popular that they managed to stick around even after the destruction of that universe. Miles is the second Spider-Man of the Ultimate Universe, taking up the mantle after the passing of Peter Parker. He has essentially all the same abilities as Spider-Man himself, but then he has some that are wholly his own, and they're actually really kinda cool. His signature difference in terms of powers would have to be his venom. It's like a form of bioelectricity that he can emit from his body and use in some really cool ways, like in punches and beams and blasts, or in his webbing. But Miles is also able to use a spider camouflage to make his whole body invisible. Miles has made his way into the 616 Earth universe and has pretty much been his own hero ever since on the Avengers and other teams, and he hasn't been stopped really at all, aka he's unstoppable. Number 2, The Thing. The longtime childhood friend of Reed Richards, Ben Grimm met up with his old friend when backpacking through the Nevada desert, like you do. This happened to coincide with Reed working on a test of a teleportation project going through the dimensional barrier into the end zone, as it's called, quote unquote. Ben wanted to see what his friend was up to, and Reed got him clearance to observe, but unfortunately, before the test started, Victor Von Doom, or Victor Von Dam as he's called here, adjusted the coordinates on the machine, causing it to malfunction and tear open a dimensional breach, sending all 5 witnesses to different locations. Ben awakened in a small village in Mexico, but also discovered that the end zone energy had increased his body mass, transforming him into a gargantuan thing with flesh made of living rock. Really weird. Now, as a member of the Fantastic Four, he found new purpose until the team broke up following Ultimatum. What sets him drastically apart from his main universe self, though, is that the Thing eventually developed a second power, to transform from his rocky appearance to one composed of purple energy, with the added benefit, on top of all of his other powers, to project energy. He also gained Sue Storm as his wife, so given all that, it's safe to say that Ultimate Ben Grimm is pretty unstoppable. And in at number 1 is Spider-Man. For a lot of people, Brian Michael Bendis' legendary Ultimate Spider-Man run that kicked off the whole Ultimate Universe in the first place is among the best of the best Spider-Man runs ever told. Peter Parker is a modern-day 15-year-old, still trying to balance his life as a teenager and a superhero. What's different from this version when compared to the regular Spider-Man is that Peter Parker's life is much more relatable and digestible for anyone born in the past 25 years. For starters, Peter isn't a photographer when he first starts at the Daily Bugle. Being a tech-savvy teenager, our hero is one of the Daily Bugle's top web designers. J. Jonah Jameson also isn't a bumbling buffoon, he's a battle-tested, competent newspaper editor that's well aware of how to handle his staff. Spider-Man's interactions with other heroes are a bit more grounded in Ultimate Spider-Man as well, as his love life being much more entertaining and realistic. Whether it's Kitty Pryde or Mary Jane Watson, Peter Parker's love life never really has a dull moment. Even Spider-Man's physical appearance makes more sense. Peter Parker has the build of a realistic, nerdy teenager, and the costume's huge bug-eyed lenses make for a perfect representation representation of a youthful hero. He may be stopped on multiple occasions, but the importance of this version of Spider-Man makes him pretty unstoppable in my heart.
Number 10. Falcon. While there have been many different Ghost Riders across time and the multiverse, sometimes we only have to look as far as our own 616 backyard to find some really unstoppable versions of this character. And this includes when Falcon himself was turned into a Ghost Rider. This all went down during Doctor Strange Damnation issue number 1, where Doctor Strange basically made a bet against Mephisto and lost that bet, who at that time had basically taken over Las Vegas and had bigger plans in regards to world domination, or should I say damnation. When Falcon was transformed into a Ghost Rider, he also carried with him his skills and abilities as a hero, which made him a pretty tough one to face when Strange's Midnight Suns were called into action. When he was pulled over to the Ghost Rider side, it was in a moment of weakness when he and the other Avengers let their differences get in the way of them saving people, which basically resulted in them beginning to fight in the midst of trying to respond to the chaos that was happening in Las Vegas. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to let us know by clicking that like button. Number 9. Ghost Rider 2099. The Ghost Rider of the future is basically like the Terminator. Kenshiro Zero Cochrane was attempting a hack with his gang when they were attacked by a rival gang, who basically attempted to steal the encrypted data that they had successfully stolen, but hadn't yet cracked themselves. In the end, Zero's gang was killed and Zero himself was in the process of dying, so he decided to upload the encrypted data in his last few moments to his girlfriend before attempting to fry the implants in his own head so that the gang wouldn't get any information from him in regards to what they were looking for. When he awoke, he was in cyberspace and ended up being offered a place in the world once more as a futuristic spirit of vengeance, given a second chance by advanced AI, who saw the world to be on the verge of collapse, where corporations would in essence devour and basically destroy everything. As a basically fully cybernetic Ghost Rider, Zero has the benefit of having a body that is completely made out of weapons, with him being uploaded into, in essence, a war machine. He also has the benefit of never really being able to die, as he could always just be re-uploaded into another bot if need be. Kinda like exists in like the cyberspace. Number 8. Black Panther. Black Panther is another character who ended up being pulled over to the side of Mephisto, seemingly becoming a member of Mephisto's Ghost Rider Avengers in the series Doctor Strange Damnation for a brief time. He's also one of the characters the Midnight Suns are forced to confront. Black Panther has a lot of power all of his own, never mind as a Ghost Rider in addition to that. He's also a pretty insane force to have on your side, especially on Mephisto's side, and operating as one of his Ghost Riders, when you also consider the political power that T'Challa has as the King of Wakanda, and at the time as the leader of the Avengers. Black Panther is one of the Ghost Rider Avengers who greet the Midnight Suns when they first arrive in Las Vegas. They are not solely confronted by him and the other Avengers though, and I suppose calling them Strange's Midnight Suns earlier was a little hasty of me, although that is kind of what happens later, considering the role that Strange plays in this story. Really, it would be more accurate to call this formation of the Midnight Suns Wong's team, perhaps. Wong, one of my favorites. Number 7. Ghost Rider Trail of Tears. This alternate version of Ghost Rider has such a tragic story and is definitely one of those Ghost Riders that would simply never give up. In fact, in a way, him being so unstoppable was kind of his downfall, as this version of Ghost Rider became aware of the curse that basically comes with being the spirit of vengeance. Like, it literally is a curse when you think about it. For this point, we're focusing on a Ghost Rider who is still from the main continuity, but exists in the past. Caleb. Caleb was a free man who managed to acquire freedom for his wife and for himself in and around the time of the American Civil War. I love Caleb not just because he is a super powerful Ghost Rider with some unique abilities, but also because his story feels unstoppable in the sense that, I mean, it's really great. It also comes with a moral that we honestly don't see enough in stories like Ghost Rider, with Caleb at the end basically acknowledging that he is cursed to hunt for vengeance, a quest that will never end. Well, this is, I guess I should more say, although Ghost Rider we do touch on it a little bit more, but in comics we don't touch on that as much as I think we should. And Caleb realizes that no matter how noble the cause may seem, anyone that hunts for vengeance is basically already damned. Number 6. Mighty Thor. Mighty Thor would have to be one of the most epic characters to have become a Ghost Rider in recent history. I mean, the power of Thor and Mjolnir alone are insane. Combine those with becoming a Ghost Rider and you become pretty undefeatable, I would say. We see this happen in action when Mighty Thor Jane Foster also joins Mephisto's side of the fight against the Midnight Suns in Doctor Strange Damnation. In issue number 3 of the series, Mighty Thor swings her hammer at Blade, and later we see her in one-on-one combat briefly fighting against Dr. Voodoo. Fortunately, that was all that was needed for Johnny Blaze, also fighting alongside the Midnight Suns against Mephisto as opposed to for him, to push ahead and face Mephisto himself. However, it just goes to show how hard it is to actually fight against a Ghost Rider version of Mighty Thor. And even then, Mephisto's Ghost Riders, Mighty Thor included, seem to be doing their job at that point, remaining pretty unstoppable, at least as of issue 3, as Mephisto takes away Johnny's curse, freeing him and making him human again, only so he can basically threaten his now very mortal life.
Number 5. Death Mask Deadpool. When Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, comes up with a revolutionary new method for dealing with cancer, he removes a tumor from Wade Wilson's head. What I think no one expected was that removing this tumor had the side effect of making Wade's insanity completely disappear. Deadpool suddenly becomes hyper intelligent, and his insanity instead turns him into becoming a super criminal with a super criminal empire. Now going by Death Wish and looking a hell of a lot like Doctor Doom, Wade basically is Doctor Doom, taking his place as King of Latveria and wearing a super sweet death mask armor. He plans to attack the alternate Earth 616 Deadpool, but when he's defeated, he goes and makes a deal with Mephisto to unleash a literal hell on his Earth. Number 4. Captain Universe Pool. In the comic Deadpool v Thanos, in the Patchwork Battle World, Thanos and Deadpool team up to look for Lady Death. It turns out that the entity had been kidnapped by a rival cosmic force, Eternity. And it turns out that Eternity is pretty peeved about being ridiculed and separated by the Infinity Gems, and Galactus' hunger, and the Annihilation Wave, and Death's Embrace. I don't know. The in-betweener comes in to talk some sense into Eternity, but meanwhile, Deadpool sees an opportunity and tries freeing Mistress Death, which didn't go so smoothly, and a fight breaks out. Thanos betrays Deadpool and starts to completely pummel Eternity, a cosmic entity, which makes no sense to me. Deadpool attacks Thanos, who simply throws the Merc with the mouth into Eternity. Now this is where it starts to get wacky, apparently. Inside the cosmic being, Wade meets the Unipower, who bestows that power onto Wade, and boom, enter Captain Universe Deadpool. With his newfound power, he was able to go blow for blow with a death-powered Thanos. Deadpool doesn't technically win, but Death is able to see the error of her ways, and she takes back her power from Thanos, causing Grimace to explode. Nice. Number 3. Lady Pool. Wanda Wilson is the Deadpool of Earth 3010. But since she is one of a very few female Deadpools, she naturally is titled Lady Pool. Lady Deadpool joined the side of a group of rebels fighting against loyalists in the United States in her own universe, that were led by Lady Pool's nemesis, General America. Yes, that's Captain America, but a general. According to Wanda, the fight started when fascists in the federal government started to impose their will on the people. As a result, a schism in Congress occurred, generals took sides, and states declared independence, which led to the current predicament. Eventually, she is assisted by 616 Deadpool, and she ends up becoming a main part of the good Deadpool Corps, and eventually she becomes the leader of that group, sacrificing herself and the Corps' ship in a fight against the evil Deadpool Corps and Galactus Pool. Number 2. Ultimate Deadpool. The Ultimate Universe has a lot of fresh takes on 616 heroes, but Deadpool got some rather unique changes that I'm not sure how I feel about, honestly. It's giving me strong X-Men Origins Wolverine vibes, which came out 3 years after this comic, so I'm not saying this comic inspired whatever they did to Deadpool in that movie, but I can't say that it didn't. Just saying, pointing that out. The Ultimate Marvel version of Deadpool was a sergeant in the military named Wade Wilson. He's grim, he's angry, he's way too serious, and he's also an incredibly racist mutant hater. Oh, he was also a cyborg with incredible strength, retained his signature healing factor, and instead of just being disfigured, he had no skin at all, and is missing parts of his skull. So his head instead is encased in a clear plastic helmet for everyone to see. Yay! Deadpool leads the Reavers, who are also pretty horrible in trying to take out prominent mutants, but on live television, like it was for sport or something. Thankfully, Ultimate Deadpool was taken off of the board by 616 Deadpool and Deadpool Kills Deadpool in 2013. Deadpool. Number 1. Dreadpool. In the Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe storyline, Deathpool murders every single superhero there is in his quest to end all of creation. Deathpool even rises against the divine powers that created the Marvel Universe, meaning the literal writers, and he won. We're introduced to this character being dragged to Psycho Man by the X-Men in an attempt to cure Wade of his insanity. Psycho Man's procedure silenced all the voices in Deadpool's head, but brought out a new one, the Ultimate Murderer. This voice is aware of himself being a fictional character and is adamantly convinced that his only salvation is to kill everything there is. Dreadpool went on a complete killing spree, ending the lives of the X-Men, the Avengers, Dr. Doom, Taskmaster, Thanos, and Galactus, but he didn't stop there. The ultimate murderer persona had gone so far that he decided to eradicate other versions of himself, namely the 616 Deadpool. Dreadpool and Deadpool each made their own Deadpool cores, assembled from alternate Deadpools throughout the multiverse, and they went head to head. But you can read that for yourself. Coming in at number 10 is Twinkie Spider-Man. While originally a crossover advertisement deal between Marvel Comics and Hostess, you know, the company that owns Twinkies, Snowballs, and those cupcake snack pastries, the Spider-Man of Earth 51914 is an official member of the Spider-Verse, being defeated by Morlun in the first Spider-Verse comic in 2014. But Morlun has defeated many spider totems, it's his whole thing. This sweet Spider-Man has all the same powers as our 616 spider-based hero, only he has the added benefit of using Hostess snacks as equipment, whether it be to distract, lure, and reason with criminals, and even get out of tight spots in his relationship, like when he gave Mary Jane a cupcake so he could slip away to fight crime. The power of sweet pastries should not be undervalued. Using his pastry-based equipment, he was able to defeat The Fly, Printout Man, Simon the Evil Swami, Madame Web, Legal Eagle, an unnamed jewel thief, Chairman, Homewrecker, Demolition Derby, Photoman, Hotshot, Junjitsu, Larcenorous Lil, and the Human Computer. So yeah, it's not just a sponsor, it is an added ability that puts him a little bit of a cut above, in my opinion. Number 9, Spider-Man Noir. A grittier, more serious, and ruthless world calls for a Peter Parker who's pretty much the same, and the Spider-Man Noir is definitely that guy. After he seeks out revenge on the Goblin for taking away the life of his Uncle Ben, he goes to a warehouse where a spider idol containing thousands of spiders is broken. One of these spiders bites Peter and Bob's your uncle. Peter has visions of a spider god and is granted abilities. He is granted most of the same powers as regular Spider-Man with a bit less strength and a stronger healing factor, but with the ability to use organic webbing, Spider-Man Noir may not be the most powerful character in the Spider-Verse. There are plenty of others who have added abilities or play a larger hand in the conflict, but he has the power of popularity on his side, being a fan favorite character ever since his introduction, which is why, in my opinion, he's one of the few alternate Spider-Men to survive Morlun, despite whatever excuse the comic gave. Also, he looks super cool. Hey nerds! Before we carry on, be sure to check out our channel and subscribe for more comic book content just like this. Alright, let's flip back to the list. Number 8, Penny Parker. This Parker from Earth 14512 doesn't actually have any powers of her own, and while that may make her a little bit of a strange choice for an unstoppable Spider-Man list, she makes up for it with the totally awesome mech spider suit worn by her father before his demise, and that is half controlled by a radioactive spider. First appearing in Edge of Spider-Verse number 5 in October of 2014, Penny and the spider mech are essentially able to do anything you'd expect from a Spider-Man, and technically she doesn't actually have any written limitations yet. Yes, that's a lame reason for her to be so powerful, but it's a legit reason all the same. The mech suit is outfitted with weapons for basically any situation a story calls for, and defenses that would put pretty much any other Spider-Man to shame. Penny also played a pretty prominent role in the animated Spider-Verse movie, and she's become an extremely popular character, which as we know, makes her just a smidge more powerful. Number 7, Superior Spider-Man. This one is a little odd. It's Dr. Otto Octavius, yes, Doc Ock, but nearing his mortal end, he switches bodies with Peter Parker, sending Peter off to Spidey Heaven, temporarily, and Otto finds himself taking on the heroic role of Spider-Man. But he isn't evil! Being in the body of Peter gave Otto an insight into Peter's life and motivation, and actually gave him a change of heart. Now, we have a Spider-Man with all the powers of Peter Parker, but the super genius intellect and cold heart of Otto Octavius. Spider-Ock, or as people call him, Spock, changes things. He took his genius and experience and applied it, making an awesome new suit, spider-bots, and mechanical arms. He also straight up took a few villains to their graves and even single-handedly defeated the Sinister Six, taking the Living Brain as a trophy. He completely dumps MJ, which is kind of a downside, but starts starts a relationship with Anna Maria Marconi, who became a popular addition to the Spider-Man canon. He purged Carly Cooper of the Goblin Serum, helped Aunt May walk again, got Peter his PhD, mainly for clout, and built a scientific empire that would make him a multi-billionaire. And a version of him played a huge role in the Spider-Verse event, even leading a whole team of spider totems. Number 6. Zombie Spider-Man. Yes, Zombie Spider-Man is essentially the same Spider-Man everyone is used to. All the same powers at least, except after being bit by a zombie, he now also has a ravenous hunger that cannot be sated no matter what, combined with the fact that he is essentially undead and can take a whole whack more punishment. Both of those factors led him and a group of other heroes to consume the Silver Surfer and Galactus, which gave them all the cosmic power. Or the power cosmic, however you want to say it. With this power cosmic, the zombie Galacti, which is what they call themselves, have the ability to absorb and tap ambient cosmic energy into their bodies at will and expel those energies, like channeling beams of energy through their hands and teleporting through time and space, devouring entire planets. With this power, they have the potential to phase through objects, accelerate the evolution of life forms, see the past by peeling back the layers of time travel, and to manipulate, absorb, and discharge any form of energy or radiation. But they mainly use it to get their next snack. Though Spider-Zombie loses all of this power, he still had it and was an incredibly powerful version of Spider-Man, and he kept surviving into the new zombie world they eventually ended up on.
Number 5. Robbie Reyes. Well, not really an alternate in the traditional sense, considering that Robbie is the current main Ghost Rider in the Earth 616 continuity right now. He's not necessarily the first person most think of when it comes to the Ghost Rider mantle, considering that he's the latest one to become the main Ghost Rider in canon, but you know, isn't the person that's been Ghost Rider the longest, I'd say. Fans of the more classic Ghost Rider character likely think of Johnny Blaze, or perhaps, if they were comic fans more in the 90s, Danny Ketch. And while the first person I do think of myself is Robbie at this point, well, maybe like Johnny and then Robbie, it's pretty close between those two, this is why I decided to include him here. Also, it's hard when we talk Ghost Riders, plural, to keep it all multiversal. I mean, there's just so many powerful and amazing Ghost Rider alternate characters that exist just within the main universe. Robbie Reyes may be one of the new riders on the block, but that does not diminish his power or the fact that he often refuses to back down from a fight, even fights that seem completely unwinnable. Number 4. Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel also for a time became a Ghost Rider during Doctor Strange Damnation. In fact, in issue number 4, we see her fight against Doctor Strange himself, taking him on in his own Ghost Rider form. Alas, she is also a pawn of Mephisto's, which means for our heroes in the story, she is just the wrong kind of unstoppable, one they have to battle against, and honestly, you do not want to fight an unstoppable villain, especially one that packs as much of a punch as Carol does on a good day, and who also now has the added bonus of all the Ghost Rider's powers too. Fortunately, Wong has a few tricks up his sleeve, and Carol ends up turning her Ghost Rider wrath on Mephisto in the end, thanks to some major plays Wong made in secret, which are then revealed, of course. He knew Mephisto's weakness, that while he ruled on Earth, his seat in Hell would be vacant, and so he sent Johnny Blaze to his doom, knowing that Johnny, once taken off the board on the earthly plane, would then be free to take over for Mephisto in Hell as its ruler. Pretty smart thinking, Wong. Number 3. Ghost Hammer. Hailing from Warp World, which we got to explore in Infinity Warps when Gamora folded the universe in half and trapped it inside of the Soul Gem, this is a variant that really packs a punch. Speaking of people that can pack a punch. Ghost Hammer, like many from Warp World, is of course a Marvel amalgam character. And not even just that, he's actually an amalgam character of an amalgam character within the Marvel universe. Ghost Hammer is both Ghost Panther and Iron Hammer combined. Ghost Panther is a combination of the characters of both Ghost Rider and Black Panther, and Iron Hammer amalgamates Iron Man and Thor into one character. So combining the two of those characters together, we get one insanely super powerful character that is not made up of just two different characters really, but instead 4 different ones, who have been folded together once and then of course once more to give us Ghost Hammer. Ghost Hammer comes equipped with Mjolnir, which for one of Ghost Hammer's previous forms, Iron Hammer, was also used to help him access the power of his suit. Number 2. Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange becomes probably one of the most powerful Ghost Riders to have ever ghost ridden in Doctor Strange Damnation. Here he attempts to face Mephisto alone and ends up being, well, pretty beaten at first, turned turn into one of his Ghost Riders. Fortunately, he has bats with him. His ghost doggo ends up possessing Steven to save him from hurting Wong. In the end, after Johnny has become ruler of Mephisto's Hell Dimension, Wong even helps Steven to become something greater, giving him the souls of all the dead Avengers for a brief moment so he doesn't have to feel alone. Aww. In essence, making him an Avenger god. But even before, when he was just a soulless Ghost Rider Doctor Strange, he would have been something fierce to see. The mystic knowledge that Steven has combined with the powers of Ghost Rider, I'd say alone, are pretty unstoppable. And when you add in a soul from bats possessing Strange's body, you also still end up being unstoppable enough. Even probably while less aware of, the finer details of battle, as I don't think Bats is, like a master tactician or anything like that. Bats, though, still could go head to head with Ghost Rider Captain Marvel, which I think speaks for itself. That's still pretty impressive. Number 1. Cosmic Ghost Rider. Maybe one of the most unstoppable versions of Ghost Rider around, definitely on this list, is Cosmic Ghost Rider. Cosmic Ghost Rider first appeared on the scene back in the 2017 Thanos series, and right away he became a very strange but very obvious fan favorite. I personally am one of the people that love him. He is one of the most ultimate Ghost Riders because he is also like the Punisher, an anti-hero well known for his ability to bulldoze through most of his enemies despite really just being a human without any real superpowers to speak of himself. He is also of course known for his ability to never give up, and this is showcased during his time as Cosmic Ghost Rider. Even with all of those he knew and loved from Earth gone and defeated by Thanos upon his return, Frank Castle still sought vengeance. And even after that was not possible, he regrettably joined up as Thanos' herald and still kept going somehow. He died, went to Valhalla, and then returned to have some time traveling adventures after Odin realized he wasn't really super happy there and didn't really quite fit in.
Coming in at number 10 is Captain America. No, Captain America is not near the top of the power hierarchy of Avenger heroes. Not by a long shot. But it's not his power that makes him unstoppable. It's his willpower. Captain America just never gives up or backs down when he believes in what he is fighting for. This is one of the big reasons that Steve Rogers has been the leading man of the Avengers. That and his genius tactical mind and his leadership skills. Almost all the Marvel heroes and even some of the Marvel villains will shut up and listen when Captain America speaks, even when those heroes and villains are leagues and bounds above Steve in terms of their power. In addition to all that, Captain America is one of the longest lasting and most popular of the Marvel heroes, and that fact also lends him some points in the unstoppability factor on the publishing side of Marvel heroes. But on top of all of that, Captain America is one hell of a fighter and is incredibly tough with his super soldier serum, bringing him to the very tippy top of the human conditioning and making him a physically perfect human, which has allowed him to withstand some pretty brutal attacks, being frozen in ice for decades, and has virtually stopped his aging. And at number 9 is Spider-Man. Just like Captain America, Spider-Man has the absolute god level of power known as popularity. He is essentially the face of Marvel Comics, and almost everyone who just knows of comic books knows of Spider-Man. Sure, Spider-Man has been defeated and even lost his life, like how he is technically currently not alive, but he always comes back, and there is a very low possibility that he will ever be brought down for good. Plus, now we have Miles Morales as well, who is going to share this spot on the list, even if he's got a few abilities that Peter doesn't have. Spider-Man has got more than popularity though. He is also very inspiring, actually really strong, and incredibly intelligent. He is seen and respected as one of the most righteous and brave heroes around, and his heroic attitude, sense of responsibility, almost perfect moral compass, and quick wit make him beloved by not only fans but other heroes and even some villains. But above all of that, it's his willpower that I think makes him truly unstoppable. Even in the face of certain deaths, Spider-Man will always get back to his feet, which has allowed him to use his incredible abilities to perform truly incredible feats. Speaking of his powers, Spider-Man possesses the proportional powers of a spider, but he's done things that even a human-sized spider would not be able to do, and his spider sense gives him an edge in battle, and that combined with his other abilities has made him next to unstoppable. And at number 8 is Luke Cage. Criminal turned unstoppable superhero is quite the feat, but Luke Cage handles that with grace, becoming a pillar of his community and even eventually becoming mayor of New York itself. Whenever I think of Luke Cage, the word unstoppable is what actually comes to mind. I just think of him as this big brick wall just standing in the way of anyone who would try to harm another person. Luke went through a super soldier experiment known as the Burstein process, which increased his cellular regeneration rate. This means that Luke was given a level of super strength that, with training and experience, has made him strong enough to lift 50 tons. But there have been times where he exceeded this, and his strength lets him perform thunderclaps, leap incredible distances, and he's even been able to grab onto the back of an aeroplane and force it to come to a complete stop. Alongside his strength, he was obviously given superhuman stamina to match, but what most know him for is his nigh invulnerability. Luke's skin, muscles, and bone tissue is about as hard as titanium steel, making him basically immune to bullets and blades. He can withstand hits of around 1 ton and blasts of 150 pounds of TNT, but those numbers wax and wane depending on the story. He has taken hits from people far stronger than himself and survived falls from 90 stories. If Peter Parker is the heart of New York City, Luke Cage is the bulwark. And at number 7 is Wolverine. Of course, an overly aggressive and angry Canadian will make this list. An angry Canadian is already such a rare occurrence that they have to be pretty strong, and Wolverine definitely is. Most people are well aware of Wolverine's abilities thanks to Hugh Jackman, but I am honor bound to explain them anyways. There are 2 things that make Wolverine practically unstoppable. The first would be his adamantium lace skeleton and by extension his claws. While not a natural occurrence, Wolverine was subjected to the Weapon X program, and for him, he was given the adamantium which bonded to his skeleton, infusing it with his bones, which makes them virtually unbreakable. It also makes his claws razor sharp and gives him added weight and velocity when throwing punches and kicks. Now, if someone were to ever break his bones, which is pretty much impossible, it wouldn't really matter because one of his natural mutations is a healing factor that is only outmatched by a few other characters in the Marvel Universe. His healing factor has allowed him to survive a nuclear explosion, being completely crushed by a steamroller, having his heart torn out, brutal and bloody fights with Sabretooth. He has even recovered from a single drop of blood, but he was being powered up at that time. His skeleton and his healing factor are just compounded by incredible senses, superhuman attributes, and general tough guy attitude to make him a pretty unstoppable member of the Avengers and more. And at number 6 is Ghost Rider. Everybody loves Ghost Rider. Doesn't matter who it is, a flaming skull and a flaming mount is just always cool. But not only is he really cool, he's quite a hardy fella. He is essentially impervious to almost all forms of normal damage, or the damage he has sustained, like having his head completely obliterated, didn't actually matter since he just instantly reformed it and didn't even feel it. The Ghost Rider has tanked hits from the Hulk on multiple different occasions and was one of the main heroes called in when Hulk returned for his vengeance on the Illuminati. Since his body becomes a flaming skeleton, most projectiles just pass straight through him or bounce off of his incredibly strong bones. The only things that have ever been shown to actually hurt him are heaven-forged or blessed weapons. Also, because of the divine or demonic energies that empower him, he can basically feel no fatigue or pain of any kind, and if anything were to actually damage him, he can recover from his injuries insanely quickly, almost instantly. But all that combined with his hellfire, soul, and sim manipulation, demonic magic, fallible penance stare, and other insane abilities makes Ghost Rider someone who most villains, and even heroes, fear even on their best days. At number 5 is Carol Danvers. Whether you love or hate Carol Danvers, there is no denying this energy-wielding superhero is an absolute powerhouse. Carol was the head of security at NASA when she was accidentally subjected to the Psyche Magnetron machine, which imprinted her with energy from Mar-Vell's Kree negabands. This basically means she was given superhuman strength that allowed her to support the weight of a dead celestial, super stamina that lets her exert herself for 24 hours before getting tired, superhuman durability to withstand planet-destroying explosions, superhuman agility and reflexes that are next to instant, a regenerative healing factor that exceeds Wolverine's and can be extended to others, self-propelled flight at 3 times the speed of sound, even in the vacuum of space, and flash precognition that allows her to randomly subconsciously anticipate the moves of her opponents. But all of this is somewhat secondary to what is arguably her main power, the ability to control, absorb, and manipulate energy of a whole bunch of different kinds. This extends to let her project her spirit, manipulate molecules, and transmute matter. She can create energy constructs and even boost up her already OP abilities. And at number 4 is the Hulk. It's almost a requirement that the Hulk show up on this list. The gamma-powered Green Goliath has been around for a long time, and ever since he showed up, there are only a small handful of people who have ever been able to stop him without using some kind of magic or reality warping. His infinite strength has a lot to do with that. A strength that grows based on his anger and has never ever really reached a cap, allowing him to destroy entire planets, be a threat to entire galaxies, and being able to shake the multiverse with his punches. It also has a lot to do with his basically limitless dynamic durability, which has allowed him to survive attacks from enchanted weapons, powerful blasts of energy, stronger than Ground Zero nuclear explosions, the Human Torch's Nova Blast, and he could stand up to forces that could crush adamantium and destroy entire planets. But now, thanks to Immortal Hulk, we know that the Hulk actually literally cannot die, coming back from the below place through green doors. Actually, in that story we even get to see an alternate future where the One Below All uses the Hulk to destroy literally everything in existence. And the Hulk is still showing more and more of his potential, with the reveal of the Titan personality that was able to fire energy blasts and is utter nightmare fuel. And at number 3 is the Scarlet Witch. As a natural conduit of one of the most powerful forms of dark magic, chaos magic, the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff, is one of the most terrifyingly powerful beings in Marvel Comics. Using her chaos magic, Wanda has the very powerful ability to alter reality, which she has used to create her own children, bring the Avengers to their knees and even completely end a few of them, and even rewrite all of reality to make mutants the dominant species for a while before wiping a ton of them out. When she was born, Wanda had a natural affinity for magic. Now this was boosted up by the gift, or curse, of chaos magic given to her by Chthon, the old god of chaos, which was then boosted up again by the experiments of the High Evolutionary at Wundagore Mountain, which gave her an even deeper connection to magic. She can channel energy from other dimensions and from entities like Chthon, Sidorak, and Morrigan, and is considered to be the nexus being of the universe. Most magic users could make this list, but few of them can do what the Scarlet Witch can do. And at number 2 is Thor. Thor, Odin's son, the Asgardian god of thunder, is one of the most powerful heroes on the Avengers roster. Whenever anyone talks about Avengers level threats, one of the key elements of that is whether Thor can handle the situation alone. In both the comics and the MCU, Thor and the Hulk are repeatedly given reasons to not be able to show up so that certain storylines can actually be compelling. Specifically, I'm talking about Civil War, where Thor had to deal with Ragnarok back home on Asgard. And that was all because if he was on Earth during Civil War, whoever had him on their side would automatically win. Being the son of Odin the Allfather and Gaia, an old god, Thor has all the incredible powers of the Asgardians, but boosted to a whole other level thanks to his mom. As the god of strength as well as thunder, he is one of the strongest Marvel characters, being able to either defeat or stalemate astronomically strong beings like the Midgard Serpent, the Hulk, the Silver Surfer, Gladiator, and Hercules. His stamina lets him basically fight forever, and he's next to completely invulnerable. Not to mention his weather and energy manipulation and the use of his hammer. Even when he isn't in the possession of his hammer though, and is just Thor Odin's son, he is still a force to be reckoned with, and, especially recently, he keeps getting more and more power boosts, like when he was Rune King Thor, or now that he's Allfather Thor, which gives him the Thor Force, and he's gone even beyond that when he became the Herald of Galactus. There's a lot more to Thor, but I think I've said enough. And finally, finally, in at number 1 is the Sentry. With the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns, Robert Reynolds, the Sentry, is not just another Marvel version of Superman. In my opinion, he is even cooler than Superman, and you can get at me in the comments for that. The Golden Sentry serum gave Robert Reynolds more than just the highest level of strength in the universe, the ability to move and fly faster than the speed of light or just straight up teleport, and near invulnerability. The Sentry also has molecular manipulation abilities that have allowed him to defeat the Molecule Man, photokinesis, which allows him to shine brighter than the sun, turn completely invisible, and produce blasts of light from his hands and eyes that could burn the Hulk's skin and level whole city blocks. He also has psionic abilities that he uses to hold himself together, implant his memories in others, erase memories, and stop the Hammer of Thor. He also has biokinesis abilities that have let him heal others, resurrect himself, reconstitute his molecules, and as the Void, give others cancer. Speaking of the Void, that is a whole other dark side to this hero that is intrinsically tied to his existence, which is not only incredibly powerful in its own right and makes the hero 10 times more interesting, but when the Sentry combined with the Void, this godlike being somehow got a huge power boost. Starting off our list at number 10 is Assassin Spider-Man. In What If Spider-Man vs. Wolverine number 1, we are introduced to Spider Assassin, a Spider-Man variant who is just a little bit more loose when it comes to the morals he follows. In his universe, with great power comes great responsibility and greater enemies, which led the Peter of Earth 8351 to leave New York City in order to protect his family from the villains who would make personal strikes. Instead, Peter joined up with Wolverine, and because of their time traveling and working together, he is much less opposed to sending criminals to the afterlife, meaning he does it on the regs. He's also almost always serious, not resorting to the usual quips and jokes that we are used to Peter using to cope with difficult or precarious situations anymore. His serious nature is also reflected in his costume, with a much darker look, especially with those black eyes. I really dig it. His web shooters have also been shown to shoot black webs in some panels, and they also include some more lethal means of dealing with his foes. He is an effective addition to the Spider Army when it was formed, and an extremely effective Spider-Man indeed. Number 9, the Spider. There are a lot of characters who go by the name of the Spider, including a pulp hero from way back in the day, but specifically, we are talking about a Peter Parker variant that's bonded with the Carnage symbiote coming from Earth 15. The Spider of Earth 15 is a much more sadistic, sociopathic, red-headed version of Peter Parker. He even claims that he has been sentenced to a total of, quote, 67 life sentences in prison for the crimes that he has committed. But of course, to make him just a bit more lovable, he has a sense of humor very much like that of Deadpool. It's great, if not a little unnerving. The Spider was introduced in Exiles number 12 and was a big part of the reality-saving Weapons X team featured in it. Being a sometimes leader of the team, as a Carnage-bonded sociopath, he was pretty powerful, but he was nonetheless sent to the afterlife by a blast from Firestar in Exiles number 44, because when you're dealing with the multiverse, there is bound to be someone stronger than you, no matter what you do and who you are. Number 8, Nightcrawler Spider-Man. Very recently, meaning this year, we have been introduced to the Sins of Sinister story arc, which is basically Mr. Sinister enacting a plan to take over the world and actually pretty much succeeding. There's a whole lot to this plan that kind of deserves its own point, but one part of his plan is using his cloning know-how to create chimeras. These essentially are spliced together versions of mutants and other heroes, so basically taking the already powerful mutant heroes and making them even more powerful by giving them a second power. There are some really cool mashups, but one of the spin-off comics from this event is X-Men Sins of Sinister Nightcrawlers. This comic features a team of spliced together Nightcrawlers who call themselves the Legion of the Night, and one of these splices puts the powers of Nightcrawler on a clone of Peter Parker. It's a blue-skinned man who can do whatever a spider can, but who can also bamf from place to place. I never knew it was something I needed, but it definitely is. Nightcrawler never gets enough love in my eyes, and he's definitely one of the coolest of the X-Men. Unfortunately, I think Marvel knows how powerful this combo would really be, so they dispose of this chimera in a pretty lame way, but in my eyes, unstoppable. Number 7, Spider-Pool. Okay, I'll be honest, we have like zero information on this alternate Spider-Man. During the Spider-Verse, we were introduced to so many many versions of Spider-Man that to go through each and every one in detail would have left us with no actual Spider-Verse story, and that story is dope, so no. But good golly, I wish for this one character they would have. First spotted in issue 9 of The Amazing Spider-Man from 2014 in a tiny little panel is an alternate Spider-Man wielding a katana. We see him again from the back in issue 14, and then we finally see a frontal view of this Spider-Man in issue 15 when the suspicions are confirmed. There for all to see is a Spider-Man who is also dressed with elements of the character of Deadpool. Surviving the war with the Inheritors that took the life of so many alternate versions of Spider-Man, of course he would make it through. We can assume that this guy has all the Spider-Man powers, but if he's also Deadpool, then this version of Spider-Man also has that god-level healing factor, and based on the katanas, he is just as okay with being a complete psychopath. While we have no idea about this Spider-Pool's name, story, powers, or personality, we can make enough guesses to know that this guy is incredibly capable and most likely unstoppable. Number 6. Takuya Yamashiro. Instead of being Peter Parker, the Japanese Spider-Man, Spiderman, is Takuya Yamashiro, a motocross racer and son of astrophysicist Dr. Hiroshi Yamashiro. Unlike most versions of Spider-Man, Takuya was introduced through a live-action Japanese Spider-Man TV show, and with that, his character differs quite a bit. For starters, his spider powers are a little less powerful due to the budget constraints for the show, which is a hilarious reason, but don't you dare think that this makes this guy a pushover. To make up for his less powerful spider powers, Takuya has a massive kaiju fighting mech named Leopardon, Power Ranger style with arm rockets, an absolutely giant sword, and a boomerang. He uses Leopardon and his spider abilities to fight the Iron Cross Army, which is a group of suspiciously human-looking aliens from an unnamed world who are led by, wait for it, Professor Monster. Nice. Due to his popularity and just how awesome he is, Takuya Yamashiro has become an official character in the multiverse, coming from Earth 51778, fighting against the Inheritors alongside the Spider Army, and he is set to appear in the second animated Spider-Verse movie, which I am pumped to see. Number 5. Peter Parker of Earth 92100. You'd think the addition of extra arms for a Spider-Man would be an added benefit. When it happened to Peter in the 616 universe though, he freaked the hell out and pretty quickly got rid of the extra limbs using the DNA of Michael Morbius. To be honest, if I sprouted 2 extra sets of arms, I'd probably be a little freaked out too. I also kinda wonder how the musculature of your body would change, but I'm getting off topic. On Earth 92100, when Peter grew his extra limbs, unfortunately, Morbius did not live long enough to help Peter because he was eaten by sharks, which meant that Peter kind of had to just deal with it. Well, what do you know, turns out during a fight with Doc Ock, after Peter embraced his extra appendages, they actually give him a distinct advantage. The added arms seem to grant him much more strength and agility, and using them he is even able to save Gwen Stacy from her demise at the hands of the Green Goblin. Unfortunately, these arms don't really protect him from the Inheritors, but they didn't really beat him. Instead, he sacrificed himself to save Spider-Man 2099 and Lady Spider from the Inheritors in Spider-Man 2099 Volume 2, Number 6 in 2014. Number 4. Silk. Cindy Moon's first appearance in the comics was actually as a cameo in issue 1 of the 2014 Amazing Spider-Man reboot. In that comic, we see the events that lead to Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man. A spider gets caught in a particle collider and becomes heavily irradiated, and then it goes off to bite Peter Parker. But after this spider drops off Peter, it crawls along the floor before climbing onto and biting the ankle of a random girl who also happened to be there as well. This girl was Cindy Moon. Just like Peter Parker, Cindy Moon gained amazing spider-related abilities. Cindy got the attention of a man known as Ezekiel Sims, who came and took her away and began training her in how to use her powers for good. He was a mentor and a father figure for her while she was with him, and after he discovered that Morlun was tracking her, he and Cindy agreed that she should be hidden away. That is, until Peter Parker found her. Silk possesses an extrasensory hyper, danger, or silk sense, which is more advanced than the spider sense of Spider-Man and other spider totems. It allows her to react significantly faster in combat for starters, but it also has superior range, and can even sense the identity of an attacker before a fight even begins. Cindy can also weirdly spin webs from her fingertips, and on top of that, she was the avatar of a powerful spider totem called the Bride, which made her play an integral part of the huge multiversal Spider-Verse event from 2014. Number 3, Mayday Parker. First appearing in a What If comic, specifically number 105 from December 1997, the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane from a future alternate world, Earth 982, Mayday Parker becomes Spider-Girl and eventually Spider-Woman, and fills the role that her father once held as the next generation of heroes. Where she is only slightly weaker than Peter in the strength department, she is much more agile and has a stronger, more precise spider sense. But her ability to stick to surfaces is considerably more powerful than Peter's as well. However, wall crawling does not come as naturally to May, and she has to concentrate to stick to surfaces. She also has the ability to transmit this ability through objects for short distances. So, as an example, Spider-Girl could stick to the floor and transmit the electrostatic stickiness through the floor, making everyone and everything stuck in place to the floor. I said floor a lot, and that was kind of weird. But what's even cooler is that she can reverse the ability, and instead of stick, she can repel off a surface. This adds power to her jumps, but it can also be used to repel people and objects away from her at a pretty considerable speed. Number 2, Kane Parker. The Clone Saga of the 90s is considered to be pretty infamous by fans of Spider-Man, but while it introduced a lot of strange elements into the continuity, it also added some pretty amazing characters in the form of Ben Reilly and Kane Parker, two somewhat overlooked but powerful Spider-Man clones from that saga. Kane is a great character with a really great arc that even saw him have his own Scarlet Spider series. Now his powers are almost identical to Peter Parker, but luckily for him, these powers were slightly altered thanks to him being a clone. While we're on the topic of power-ups though, there is a reason I chose Kane for this spot over Ben Reilly, who seems to be the more popular clone. Thanks to an ancient prophecy involving spider totems, Kane could transform into a giant tarantula-like monster known as the Other. On top of his spider powers, he gained venomous bone-like stingers which extended from his forearms, night vision, and enough power to defeat the leader of the Inheritors in the Spider-Verse event, before he was set back to normal. And in at number 1, Spider-Man. Just good old friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He is essentially the face of Marvel Comics, and almost everyone who just knows of comic books knows of Spider-Man. Sure, Spider-Man has been defeated and even lost his life, but he always comes back, and there is a very low possibility that he will ever be brought down for good. Spider-Man has got more than popularity though. He is also very inspiring, actually really strong, and incredibly intelligent. He is seen and respected as one of the most righteous and brave heroes around, and his heroic attitude, sense of responsibility, almost perfect moral compass, and quick wit make him beloved by not only fans but other heroes and even some villains. But above all that, it's his willpower that I think makes him truly unstoppable. Even in the face of certain death, Spider-Man will always get back to his feet, which has allowed him to use his incredible abilities to perform truly incredible feats. Speaking of his powers, Spider-Man possesses the proportional powers of a spider, like we all know, but he's still done things that even a human-sized spider would not be able to do, and his spider sense gives him an edge in battle that, combined with his other abilities, has made him next to unstoppable. And even when placed beside all the other Spider-Men and Spider-Women of the Spider-Verse event, he was acknowledged as the most powerful one. Coming in at number 10 is Dark Claw. So, what happens if you take Logan Howlett and Bruce Wayne and just mash them up together? You subtract Robbins, add some Canada, carry the two, and you'll find you get Logan Wayne. This awesome character is from the amalgam universe of Earth 9602. Obviously, Bruce Wayne has no actual powers of his own unless you count his undeniable skill, so most of the abilities belonging to Logan Wayne come from his Wolverine half. A massively powerful regenerative healing factor, slowed aging, superhuman senses, plus his healing factor and adamantium skeleton allow him to have a degree of super strength. But thanks to his Wayne half of things, Dark Claw is a master detective and master of martial arts, stealth, acrobatics, and intimidation. After he witnessed the passing of his parents, Logan went to live with his uncle up in Alberta, Canada, who then also lost his life to poachers. So yes, this is still as dark as both Bruce and Logan's backstories. He then went to kick it with some nuns and then joined up with the Canadian Air Force. Now after this, at some point, he joined the Weapon X program and learned of his mutation and gained his claws alongside his incredibly dangerous rival, Creed H. Quinn, who would become a saber-toothed Joker hybrid named Hyena. Logan Wayne would go back to New Gotham City, where he decided to avenge his parents' and uncle's deaths by donning the costume and name of Darkclaw. Number 9. Sideburns. When Galactica, the daughter of Galactus, is looking for her next meal in issue 1 of her self-titled comic, she finds Earth, a lovely little morsel of a planet teeming with scrumptious life. But while looking at her dinner, she happens to notice Wolverine, a mutant who can seemingly regenerate from anything. I mean, there's also Deadpool, but whatever. Realizing his mutant regenerative abilities, she formulates an idea of using a bit of his harvested DNA with a bit of celestial power to create Sideburns, the regenerating planet. A planet-sized Wolverine that would grow back after each meal, giving the World Devourer billions and billions of years of meals. Unfortunately, she just as quickly realizes that a planet made up of Canadian mutant DNA like this, prone to drinking beer over anything else, and with predilection to being feral, would be highly unstable. Unfortunate, because I'd love to see this guy floating around through the galaxy. Number 8. House of M Wolverine. Now, to be clear, technically this version of Wolverine is just regular old 616 Wolverine, since unlike other characters in this Scarlet Witch created reality, Wolverine retains all of his old memories, which gives him a distinct advantage in this world. But outside of his story-serving memories, before he regains those memories, this Wolverine was a member of Magneto's Red Guard, which saw him have additional training as a SHIELD operative, adding extra skill to a character who is hard to even scratch on a villain's best day. Also, in this reality, Logan has himself a little relationship with Mystique, unlike his alternates who seem to always be pining after Jean Grey. Is this an advantage over regular Wolverine? Depends on your taste. Number 7. Vampire Wolverine. In What If number 24, thanks to his healing factor, Wolverine is actually immune to being turned into a vampire from just a regular old bite, which allows him to be the best one suited to bring down the threat of vampires themselves. But when he finally takes down Dracula, he actually decides to have a little snack on the dead vampire, which does turn the mutant into not just a vampire, but the new Vampire King. The fact that Vampire Wolverine is a vampire means that his strength and speed are enhanced to vampiric levels. On top of that, he has an evil personality that is fueled by the character's desire to drain the blood of the living. Now couple that with his already somewhat feral personality, his healing factor, adamantium skeleton, and the vampire trait of immortality, and he is very dangerous compared to the usual Wolverine. Number 6. Ultimate Wolverine. I'm gonna be honest, this version of Wolverine is a bit alarming in terms of his morals and preferences, and just his behavior in general is just a bit less heroic than his 616 counterpart. But despite that, it is hard not to admit that he is quite the powerful character. His healing factor is a bit different than his prime version and is called a survival factor. That means he can survive being torn in half, departed from his head, and even blown up by a nuclear explosion. He can also detect lies and still has an adamantium skeleton. He was trained by Weapon X as an emotionless assassin, but when the Brotherhood hired him to take out Xavier, he proves he is more than just muscle, overcoming his brainwashing and joining the X-Men. Although, it may have only been just because he fell in love with the teenage Jean Grey when he was like 30 years old, which is a little uncomfortable. Number 5. Days of Future Past. Wolverine in the Days of Future Past storyline comes from a future world that has become apocalyptic because of the Sentinels, which basically eradicated mutants by the thousands and ended up enslaving the planet, both mutant and humankind alike. Now Wolverine, who in this future is older and by extension more experienced, is a more powerful version of his 616 counterpart. He still has all the powers of the regular Wolverine, but he just works a lot smarter. Unfortunately, he still ends up passing when a Sentinel destroys him, leaving only his adamantium skeleton behind. But thanks to comics being comics, this version is revived and appears again much later on in Earth X, standing in for this Earth's Wolverine, who had finally married and settled down with Jean Grey, which I think makes him more powerful, but he also really settled, grew a rather large gut, and seems to have completely distanced himself from his former self. Jean also abandons her former life and is now an out-of-shape housewife chasing after their kids and resenting her choice to marry Logan. So yes, Days of Future Past Logan was needed here for sure. Number 4. Old Man Logan. In the alternate universe where we are introduced to Old Man Logan and Old Man Hawkeye, everything is in shambles. It's an apocalyptic wasteland, and all because the villains, under the leadership of the Red Skull, had coordinated a massive attack on the world's superheroes, leaving only a very few alive. Logan himself was tricked into wiping out every single member of the X-Men, and while that is tragic, I do have to say that's incredibly impressive. Like, Damn. Impressive or not, it drove Logan mad with grief and he vowed to become a pacifist. He retired to a quiet farming family life, letting the world go to hell around him, but we need a story, so that can't fly. Eventually, being short on money and needing to help his family, he joins Hawkeye on an adventure across America to deliver a briefcase of super soldier serum. After he goes on this grand adventure, defeats the Red Skull, and returns home, the Hulk gang has decimated his family. This is when he finally pops his claws for the first time since the story began, and ooh, it's satisfying. He wipes out the entire gang and eviscerates the Hulk himself, and then eventually finds his way to the main Marvel universe. Another version of him even gets the powers of Venom as well. So cool. Number 3, Weapon Omega. After the Mutant Legion went back in time and accidentally took the life of his pops, Xavier, Apocalypse came out of hibernation 10 years too early and took over control of the United States. Enter the Age of Apocalypse storyline. The Logan of Age of Apocalypse is extremely ferocious and he goes by the name Weapon X. He has only one hand after having it blasted off by Cyclops, but his claws still pop through the nub, which is kind of alarming. He and Jean Grey set off apart from the X-Men to save mutants and stop Apocalypse, but Weapon X eventually becomes the new Apocalypse, gaining his celestial and mutant powers to try and stop aliens from destroying the population of Earth. Yes, it's nuts, but I suggest you check out this story because it's super cool. Number 2, General James Howlett. In the second volume of Extreme X-Men, joining a team of multi-dimensional mutants that hunt down evil Xaviers across many dimensions is a much different version of Wolverine. Hailing from the reality of Earth 12025, this version of our feral mutant is the Governor General of the Dominion of Canada and Viceroy of Her Majesty's expedition to Shangri-La. He is like a version of Wolverine who is also mixed with President Theodore Roosevelt but still Canadian. General James Howlett is an adventurer and hero alongside his partner and lover, the demigod Hercules, or Heracles if you prefer and want to get smarmy in the comments. These two shared a love that was built after years and years of working together, and their bond was so strong that Herc gave James a super cool upgrade in the form of a skeleton made of adamantine, which is a godly golden metal even stronger than adamantium, making Wolverine completely indestructible and immune to telepathic attacks. Unfortunately, due to the god on mortal nature of the relationship, the Greek gods banish the pair to Tartarus, where they fight hordes and hordes of lost and damned souls for like 4 years. His penchant for big booms and affinity for political service make him a fun take on this character, and the beard? Oh, it's classic. And in at number 1 is Phoenix Logan. The Phoenix Force embodies life in the Marvel Universe. It is incredibly powerful, and when it chooses a host, that being becomes a force to be reckoned with, which is funny how it always seems to happen to characters who are already pretty damn unstoppable by themselves. Old Man Phoenix is an alternate reality version of Wolverine from Earth 14112, which features a story that is actually revolved around Old King Thor. Now, Wolverine's past resembles his Earth 616 counterpart, but it's a little different, because after Loki destroyed everyone on Earth, including Wolverine, the Phoenix Force chose Wolverine as its avatar, resurrected him, and granted him its powers. So what we have here is Wolverine's regenerative healing factor, retractable adamantium claws, and enhanced senses combined with the Phoenix's psionic powers, cosmic pyrokinesis, and flight. These factors come together to make him one of the most powerful entities in his universe, even more powerful than old King Thor himself. But coming in at number 10, it's actually Superman. We're just gonna get this one out of the way now. Yes, Superman is practically unstoppable. On one hand, you've got what is probably the strongest, most durable guy in DC with a heart of gold and a strong moral compass. He's basically a god to us, but he is also one of the very first real superheroes to show up in comic books. The benchmark for what makes a hero a hero. If it's not his massive amounts of power and his strong will that keeps him in the fight, then it's his massive popularity. When DC had the Death of Superman story, there was absolutely no way that Superman was gone forever. We've seen stories where he not only takes over the Earth, but stories where the Man of Steel lives until the absolute end of the universe itself. His own stories suffered because of the fact that he's just unbeatable. He's so damn powerful that nothing was a real challenge for him. Superboy Prime, essentially Superman without weaknesses, was one of the largest threats in the multiverse, and he went toe-to-toe with a Dr. Manhattan and powered up Batman who laughs. Now I'm putting Superman at number 10 because he's a golden boy and he bothers me in a similar way to Captain America. I'm sorry. In at number 9 though is Orion. Orion is a new god and the son of Darkseid, and as a hero with a dark ancestry, he is quite the conflicted do-gooder. He has many forms and he has many abilities. He exists beyond the normal multiverse on a higher plane of existence called the Sphere of the Gods. Born on Apocalypse but adopted by the new gods of New Genesis, Orion is in a constant war with his inner darkness and with his father, Darkseid. Orion is repeatedly praised and stated to be a warrior with skill and ferocity second to none. While undercover on Apocalypse, he was their greatest warrior and would have slaughtered their entire army during training. He has held open the hand of the god of strength and might, who is threatening creation and ripping holes in reality with that strength. He stands against and fights a sun-amped up Superman one-on-one, something no one else in the Justice League was able to do, and he can tank star system destroying explosions. Orion moves with the speed of thought. His intelligence was enough that he created the Genesis box, which can destroy and rebuild a universe. He can grow to any size he wants, move through time, has a healing factor, super senses, and wields the Astro Force, which does a hell of a lot on top of everything else. But, as an example, it once sealed holes in reality and knocked out Superman in a single shot. And that's all just Orion holding back and not using his true power, called the Source of the Beast. But I think we can agree Orion is a beast here. Coming in at number 8, Martian Manhunter. I think it's incredibly easy to overlook Martian Manhunter's incredible capabilities. Yes, he is more well known for being a telepath and a shapeshifter, but this guy packs a hell of a punch with the Martian abilities of phasing, Martian vision, and density alteration. Now, his probably most powerful form was when he became Furnace, completely negating his weakness for fire. But Furnace was a villain and therefore cannot really be on this list. But in DC 1 Million, we get a John Johns who leads a war against Darkseid and gets him to surrender to the Source Wall, becoming trapped inside of it. The Source Wall, in return, gave John one wish. His wish was to become one with Mars, meaning John became a living planet while maintaining his multiversal telepathy and his genius intelligence. We don't get to see much of this version of John, but we can guess a lot of things about this version. Firstly, his weakness to fire is probably non-existent, because I mean, people gotta make fire on a planet to survive. We can also probably assume John keeps his other Martian abilities to a degree, and there's also the possibility that the passage of time has increased those natural abilities considering he's defeated Darkseid. We can also assume he would now also have the powers that usually come with being a living planet, like weather manipulation and control of the elements. He can control the sands of Mars to an incredible degree to do crazy things, so there's that. But in at number 7, Swamp Thing. Alec Holland was a scientist who, much like some other scientists, turned superhero when he was caught in a disaster. For Alec, it was an explosion. When he jumped away from the explosion, Alec was bathed in the chemical vats of the Louisiana swamps, and his memories were absorbed into the being known as Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing is an immortal creature who fights to protect the planet from threats to nature, including many supernatural villains. The Swamp Thing has complete mastery over all forms of plant life, and through this power, he is in constant communication with the very essence of the Earth, the green, and he serves as the plant elemental for the entire planet. In the past, Swamp Thing has gained access to other elemental powers, like at one point gaining control over earth, water, air, and fire, in addition to that of plant life. Theoretically, so long as there is plant life on planet Earth, Swamp Thing will always have a vehicle through which to house his consciousness, which makes him effectively immortal. He has basically revived himself countless times, just forming a new body out of plant life every time the current body can't keep going on, and he didn't even know he was doing this for the longest time. As a member of the Justice League Dark, Swamp Thing has been called on to help battle many supernatural threats over the years, and his recent TV show was hella underrated. Bring that shit back. Number 6, Captain Atom. Nathaniel Atom was transformed into Captain Atom in the 60s after being semi-forced to participate in a potentially fatal experiment sitting at ground zero of a nuclear explosion encased in an alien metal. Now, the explosion didn't actually kill him. What it did do was bond the alien metal to his flesh, giving him superpowers and throwing him 20 or so years forward into the present day. The alien metal gave him incredible abilities like flight, matter manipulation, energy manipulation, time manipulation, energy absorption, telepathy, spatial manipulation, quantum manipulation, force field creation, time travel, magic and mind manipulation, and control over the quantum field. These powers have let him perform some insane feats, like you can imagine, like creating a universe within the quantum field and later destroying that universe, fighting Superboy Prime, easily defeating a team composed of multiple versions of himself before absorbing them and creating an explosion powerful enough to destroy a universal space-time continuum. That was a lot. He is truly an insanely strong being, and I would be ashamed to not include him on this list. And at number 5 is Hulk Spider-Man. I don't have any problem constantly re-talking about this version of Spider-Man and the Hulk because it's freaking cool. Appearing in the Immortal Hulk with Great Power story, Peter Parker is granted the alter ego of the Hulk after Loki magically transfers the ability to him, taking it away from Bruce Banner. All the proportional spider powers mixed with the unstoppable force that is the green monstrosity of the Hulk. It's actually really cool. If not, a little silly to see the Hulk wearing a torn spider suit. And there are tons of hilarious moments in this story, like Spider-Hulk getting annoyed at the stupid sticky wall, which is just his wall crawling powers. Like, come on. Banner calls in the Fantastic Four with the hope of being able to fix the situation, and I personally wish they just left it so we could still have Spider-Hulk. But alas, the power of the Hulk is switched back to Banner with the help of the Fantastic Four and Banner's own genius. It's a short little story that seems almost self-contained, as if it is indeed an alternate universe story, but it's an insanely cool one, and a Spider-Hulk would be an incredibly powerful character if he were to show up again and learn how to overcome the rage thing. Number 4, Ghost Spider. Spider-Gwen, or as she has come to be known, Ghost Spider, is the Gwen Stacy from the alternate reality of Earth 65. In this reality, it is Gwen Stacy, not Peter Parker, who is bitten by a genetically engineered super spider. This bite granted her superhuman strength, speed, toughened flesh, and pretty much all the spider-based powers that the regular Spider-Man would possess. Plus, in my opinion, she has the best looking spider suit. After Gwen is depowered by Cindy Moon during her self-titled comic, Ghost Spider bonds with the Venom symbiote, and successfully too. Gwen has actually learned to find a very healthy balance with her symbiote. The symbiote itself enhances whatever emotions the host has, right? So, when she first bonded with Venom, thanks to a corrupt Matt Murdock, Kingpin, who she was forced to team up with, she was rage-fueled and looking for revenge against the Rhino for attacking her father, and eventually against Murdock himself. But over time, she realized that she needed to control that and give Venom better qualities to enhance in order to control and find balance with the symbiote. In a way, Venom actually helped Gwen to become a better hero. She is another fan-favorite alternate spider hero, and as such has featured in tons of stories. But if you're looking for something to read where Ghost Spider is featured, I suggest Edge of Spider-Verse, where she first appeared, and her own self-titled comic series Spider-Gwen Volume 1 from 2015. Number 3, Spider-Ham. Hailing from a universe where all the Marvel characters are replaced with anthropomorphic cartoon character animal versions of themselves, Peter Porker, yes that is his real name, is Spider-Ham, a pig. Now Peter Porker was actually born a spider named Peter, and he lived in the basement lab of May Porker, a scientist who had created, quote, the world's first atomic-powered hairdryer. Using this atomic hairdryer, May accidentally irradiated herself, and in a weird fit of rage I guess, she bit Peter the spider, which made him turn into an anthropomorphic pig, just like her, only with the relative powers of a spider. In his premiere issue, he would go on to do battle with Hulk Bunny, created when Bruce Bunny was trapped in an arcade cabinet and bombarded with gamma radiation, and I wish I was making that all up, but it really happened. Spider-Ham has most of the same abilities as 616 Spider-Man, only he has this rather unique ability called called Spider Nonsense, which basically allows him to be more and more cartoony the more danger he is in, which is the perfect reason to have the wackiest nonsense happen that will save this piggy's hide in some of the most imaginative ways possible. Cartoon powers are incredibly powerful, bordering on reality warping, so this is a pretty unstoppable little piggy. Number 2, Miles Morales. Born to an African American father and a Puerto Rican mother, Miles Morales of the 1610 universe was bitten by the Oz-enhanced spider that caused him to pass out and foam at the mouth. When he awoke, he discovered he had powers. Cool! He would go on to become the next Spider-Man of the Ultimate Universe, and people love him. Miles Morales is an incredible character. He has almost all of the regular spider abilities, plus some amazing powers unique to himself. Namely, his venom, which is like a form of bioelectricity that he can emit from his body and use in some really cool ways, like punches and beams and blasts, as well as at long range using his webbing, and that ain't all. Miles is also able to use a spider camouflage to make his whole body, and even his clothes and costumes somehow, go invisible. And apparently, he is immortal as a side effect of the Oz formula that contributed to his abilities. Also, similar to Ghost Spider Gwen Stacy, who Miles may have a bit of a romance with in this universe, Miles' suit is just dope as hell. And finally, in at number 1 is May Parker. Earth X. It's a world where basically every single person has powers, things have gone apocalyptic, and where the daughter of Peter Parker, May Parker, is Venom. While her retired and cynical pops ain't too thrilled about it, she does actually have complete control over the symbiote thanks to her advanced genetic and honed spider sense. She was eventually under the control of this kid going by the name of the Red Skull, and thanks to her father and other Earth X classic heroes, she was saved. This Spider-Woman / Venom hybrid and her father Spider-Man go on to join a super-powered police force and fight crime and supervillainy threats together. Nice. She eventually, after the death itself, gets recruited by Kang the Conqueror as part of a multiversal team to fight the Apocalypse Twins. In addition to her proportional spider powers plus the enhanced spider sense, she gains all the usual symbiote powers as well, plus a few extra, like what seems to be a rudimentary form of telepathy, and 'tis believed her symbiote could go on to mutate further to gain more powers, which is a good way for Marvel to say, we can do whatever we want with this. She's definitely one of the cooler incarnations of both Spider-Man and Venom to grace the pages of comics.